Good evening, all. Welcome to this week's Midweek Geek with me, the old geek, and I am joined by my erstwhile panel tonight of Bear, IQ, and Halakar. No favoritism there, just simply in order of their arrival. The keenest first, and Bear, but to be honest, Bear and IQ get here before I do, so. Yeah, I'm disorganized, but I have an excuse today. Bloody workman. Right. Hello, chat. Hello, you're wrong. Hello, Brian. Anybody else who is lurking? Say so. Give us a wave. How's gaming been going this week?
Have wings.
How's gaming been going this week then, chaps?
Let's see. Saturday, I had a heroic, my face-to-face heroic game and killed a character. Whoops. That happens.
Oh.
Yeah, a superhero game, no less. What?
Ooh.
And beyond that, Monday night I had a second round of heroic game online that went well, and that's about it. That's my gaming for the week, and I won't play again until Friday.
Okay. Iman?
Oh, Call of Cthulhu last night, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah, we finished the Trieste chapter of the story.
Yeah.
We actually did pretty well. Got some sanity and some luck back, so which means we must have done well.
Because I'm not that evil, really, am I? I'm really not that evil. I do give you little snippets every now and again. Little snippets.
Yeah, little snippets. So yeah, a guy's just getting his skin casually flayed. Yeah, roll for sanity, please. Like we haven't seen it 100 times before, and we still need to do it.
You had seen the after effects. You'd not seen it actually happening while the victim was still alive.
That's true, actually. Yeah, he was still alive. Yeah.
Yes. And then there was Harold, played by Andy, going a bit berserk, and yeah.
Oh,
if Andy wants to,
what did he do? He where is he? He's not in chat, is he?
Yeah.
So the rest of us basically walked away, and he stayed with this person who was alive, and he basically just took his hammer and went to town on him.
Absolutely. Yeah, he hung him upside down and gutted him as well, because he's been waiting to do that for months to a cultist. Because that's what happened to one of his friends in a previous adventure. He was and Andy's character's sanity has been rocky for a little while. Very rocky for a little while. As in single figures. So, yeah. And Halakai, any gaming from you?
My group finished Against the Cult of the Reptile God. I'm surprised they all lived. They had their first experience with an undead that could only be hit by magic, and there was a fear save involved, and only 2 made it. Then they found a white, and the cleric got level drained, but not enough to kill him.
Of course, there's a coffer corpse, isn't there, in there?
Yes. And the Naga bit 2 people. They both made their saving throw versus poison. I won't say I was disappointed, but I was surprised.
It sounds like the dice were favoring them.
They were, and that took them through a new calendar month. And even with having been in a swamp and in a muddy, nasty area, nobody contracted parasites or disease. So the dice gods were on their side.
Good stuff. Mage is lurking. Dirty History and Hobbies is here.
Oh, you're
David
right.
Jack.
His first OSE, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Squirrel Hermit. Hello, chaps. Yeah, there was an OSE game that I had to miss on Saturday, unfortunately. It was Your Wrong's first OSE game. I'm glad to see you enjoyed it. I did listen in to bits and pieces. I couldn't listen to a lot of it, unfortunately, because I was very busy. And I listened to on my drive home. I was listening to you all discuss it. So Good to see. We played some MERP as well on Saturday evening, and yeah, the party have ended the extortion racket, and now they're trying to work out where to go next to deal with those who were the extortionists were paying, those that were providing the extortionists with their cover. So we shall see. And then, of course, Call of Cthulhu on Tuesday, last night, which was me making about 1 page of Horror on the Orient Express, last about 2.5 hours of the session. Dragging things out.
You got your money's worth out of that, let me tell you.
Absolutely dragging things out and tormenting you.
Basically, all we were doing was escaping some caves and getting on a train, and that was 2.5 hours.
Yeah. And the bit in there that says the flight from the caves assumes you hadn't given the medallion to the things.
Oh, it assumed we hadn't.
Assumed you hadn't.
That's interesting. Oh, there's Andy.
There's Andy. Yes. Mad me. I'm just carrying out justice. Hello, Christopher.
Justice, he calls it. Yeah.
Justice. Yes. We now have 2 characters in that Call of Cthulhu group with single-digit sanity. So things are going to go a bit haywire, I believe. So that's been my gaming. And today at work was fun and games as well, as our shutter got mangled. Because I didn't spot that a workman had left something in the corner of our shop frontage as I dropped the shutter. The workman was working not even in front of our shop, but to the side of the shop on the pavement. You call it the sidewalk over where you are, and had dug a big hole and had put all these protective barriers around it. And it was a piece of the barrier that was just sort of propped in the corner of our shop. I didn't see it there. Dropped the shutter, and of course, and now the shutter's knackered.
Roll for sanity.
Yeah. At the end of a hot day.
The indifference of urban planning has affected you horribly. Roll for sanity.
Yeah. He failed his perception check.
I did fail the perception check, but I would say that the workman had already failed his intelligence check.
Yeah, oh, he definitely did.
Oh,
or he failed his charisma check to give a fuck.
Yeah, that might be the case. But, well, he has said that his company insurance cover should cover it.
He's not the one paying for it, right?
No, fingers crossed. Anyway.
I mean, you'd bloody hope the insurance would cover it.
Yeah. And he accepted responsibility while the owner of the shop next door to us was listening. So I have a witness.
Do you?
I do.
Do you really?
I do, yes.
You don't have a witness until they're willing to go on the stand. Never forget.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Will they be willing to attest to that in a court of law?
Yeah, well. Anyhow, anybody else popping? Oh, here's Straw Piglet as well. Hello, Straw Piglet. Who needs sanity indeed? Who needs sanity? But I tell you something we do need. If we're playing fantasy games, almost how many fantasy games do we play that don't feature humanoids of some sort? Aren't many, are there? There's always some sort of twisted vestige of humanity that's turned into a new sort of creature and rampaging and causing mayhem. I think that's fair to say. I know. Would you class your beast men in your Palladium game as humanoids?
What do you mean?
Well, firstly, okay, let's define what is a humanoid.
What's his name? The Noble Savage.
How politically correct do we have to be?
You don't have to be politically correct.
because some games like the
Stir up
sci-fi
drama,
games,
quick.
some of the sci-fi games, you don't so much have humanoids as other races. I'm thinking of Star Wars for one.
Yeah.
But in the traditional D&D, a humanoid is anything that is roughly human roughly human in semblance without belonging to one of the primary playable races. So you've got your humans, you've got your demi-humans, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, and then anything other than that that roughly fits the bipedal, somewhat intelligent, possibly cast would be a humanoid.
Yeah.
Does a halfling count as a demi-human? Aren't they more like a demi-human or a quarter human? I mean, really.
Yeah, a hemi-demi or a demi-hemi or something like that.
And a dwarf, I wouldn't call a dwarf a demi-human. I wouldn't even call an elf. I think demi-human's a horrible term. I think it's the worst term of all of them. It bothers me more than the word race ever would, because it's just so fucking stupid a term, demi-human.
Well, they dropped the term demi-human, didn't they? From certainly from D&D around 3rd or 4th edition.
Yeah.
It was very much a TSR term, demi-human.
It's not a good term. It doesn't like it's stupid. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. It's a dumb term. Elves are elves. Humans are humans. Why wouldn't we call them demi-humans? They're not. They're elves. They're dwarves. They're halflings. They're goblins. Now, humanoid, like Sean just said, is an old term for monster. And this is where we get into the problem of the D&D classification system, because all of these terms are there for spell function. This spell affects humanoids. This spell affects demi-humans. This spell affects humans. So once again, the problem is baked into the engine. And once you get rid of that, it's the problem, which is everything else in D&D works tickety-boo. The magic system always fucks it up. Always fucks it up. So for me, a humanoid is anything vaguely human-shaped, as in the term we use in the modern real science vernacular of a humanoid.
When I think humanoid, I think anything with 2 legs and 2 arms that walks upright.
Yeah, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. Chuds abound.
Chuds, that's it. Yeah.
Now, I don't mind the term demi-human, because to me it instills an idea that they are closer to humans than a humanoid.
So do they think of you as a demi-elf?
I would argue
Possibly.
They don't, and that's my point.
They're down on us.
This is an absolute De Vere type statement to be making, this from this place of undeserved superiority.
I think elves. I don't know what elves would call us, because I think they would look down on us.
That's correct. The centaur is not a humanoid.
No,
it's
they're
a creature.
Definitely not.
It could be an equinoid, I suppose.
Here we have a very technical definition here. Binocular vision with forward-facing eyes, habitual upright bipedal locomotion, generalized forelimb with opposable thumb, and symbolic capacity / language use.
Wait, is that the definition for humanoid?
Yes.
See, I would argue... Yes. I mean, I'm coming from a completely different place than most of you guys, but I would argue that language use isn't part of that. It's just the shape that matters when you call something humanoid.
Would you say a golem is humanoid?
Oh my God, Brian! Sorry, what was that? Would I think of what?
I'm saying to Iman, would you a human-shaped golem, big 10-foot tall iron golem or something like that? Would you say that was a humanoid?
No.
But it's human-shaped.
Doesn't matter. It's not autonomous.
No, because a human shape is roughly 5 to 6 foot tall.
But it was created.
But it's also autonomous. It's not autonomous.
Halflings are 3 foot tall. Are they humanoid?
Yes, because they're autonomous. They're an oid. The oid part is what makes them a creature that is alive and moving.
The oid means human-like, right?
I say obviously this is the general issue. The definition. Not all humanoids will have language, but not all creatures that are human-like can be described as being humanoid. because certainly a golem could have the appearance of a human, but certainly not be a humanoid.
But it's a
See, when you said
construct.
golem, I
It's
had
not
construct,
a
yeah.
real being. It can't breed. It can't sit around and ponder about how shitty its day has been. It can't break its programming. It is not an oid. It is a construct.
Tolkien orcs are spawned from pits. They don't breed.
But they are still sentient and aware and can function with free will.
There we go.
Don't, but they can.
There we go. Right, but no, it's all. I think it is a difficult definition. It's a definition that people have wrestled with for years and years and years and years and years.
So what do you think is closer to a human, a demi-human or a humanoid?
For me, a demi-human.
See, I would argue that that makes them less human because you're literally saying they're half human.
Okay, so
Everybody in the chat stop being reasonable and start getting uppity, please.
Yeah, let's cause some drama,
Who's
conflict.
got
Come
the
on.
double covered book of humanoids? They can look it up.
Here we go. Look what Straw Piglet that says though. It's like demigod. It works.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me because demigod has a completely different meaning than a demi-human. And also, what is a demiurge then? What's a demiurge?
What's a demiurge?
Or what about a demi-lune? Or a half pint, a demi-pint? You know, like, I mean, the thing is the word demi means half.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
It
exactly.
means half. An elf is not half human.
Whereas I think humanoid is more closely resembling a human than anything else that isn't human.
Now, you could, Demi Moore is half an actress. That's correct, Brian James. So,
Demi Lovato.
half a singer, Demi Lovato, half a singer. There you go. So the point being is that if you're going to call an elf, a halfling, or a dwarf a demi-human, you're saying they're half human. They are not. For some reason, in Wisconsin in the 70s, they got it in their head that the word demi meant adjacent or like. It doesn't. It means half.
It does. Yeah.
A demi-lune is a half moon. You know, like
Yeah,
that's just the way it is.
demi-frère, half brother.
It's exactly. So, demi-human's a horrible term. Sorry.
Okay. But going
I'm
back
trying
to
to get people riled up and everybody's being reasonable.
No, so I would say if you walked up to someone and called them a demi-human, that sounds like an insult.
Oh, that'd be a fight.
would it?
Oh, yeah. If they understood the language, yeah.
It's like I said, it's like you're calling them something less than human.
Hello, Eagle Rider.
There'd be
I
some
call a lot of
really
people that
educated
don't have a
racism,
problem with
though,
it.
eh? That'd be like
Well,
crazy educated racism. I'm tired of all these demi-humans coming here and taking our jobs. Oh, demi what's now?
literally.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a specific world mages musings. We're talking about the overall usage of the terms. So sci-fi counts, superheroes count, horror counts. Just because D&D is the 800-pound gorilla in the world doesn't mean it gets to define all determinations of the English language in relation to gaming moving forward.
Well, we are going to be covering all sorts of humanoids in this stream. That is the plan. So I mean, the first thing I had down here was humanoid versus demi-human. The differences, the reasons for the different terms, and all that sort of thing. And we now know for. I'm with Halakar on this one. I don't mind the term demi-human.
Well, I would also add that demi-human implies that they are half human, whereas humanoid has no human actual genetics, but it might look human. Yeah, that's the other thing.
But as we've already said, there has to be something more than just looking human, because a golem can look human, a statue can look human. So there has to be something more there.
Free will, sentience, and you know, all those other good things that come along with being alive, which a golem isn't.
Here, well, I will argue that there's a lot of humanoid races that don't have free will, but that's where we're getting into a real.
Who doesn't have free will?
Wait, when you say free will,
Which races don't
Gnolls.
have free will?
No,
Most have free will.
no, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No,
Yes, they do.
They
Why
have
would you think they don't have free will? There's
they have literal. They have literal. I mean, in D&D terms, they have literal demonic blood, and they are absolutely bestial, vile creatures that will try and eat almost anything, anything warm-blooded they get hold of.
So then you're saying a cat and a dog doesn't have free will?
There are animal instincts in a cat and a dog.
Oh, you're
has
one of
a-
those. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I have a dog. I have a
I
dog.
don't. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, and yes, they do have the ability to think, but there are instincts which take over.
A
My
cyborg
dog knows not to go in the road, but if she was chasing a cat into the road, she wouldn't stop and think.
And yet, children know not to go on the road, but if they're chasing a ball,
Yes,
they wouldn't
Andy,
think.
that's right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's true.
So, do
What
children
Andy
not have
said.
free will? See, this is the no fun argument, and that's why I'm so happy Sean's making it, because I guess it'll go back to my Sean is the conversation killer of fun at all times.
It's difficult. A
We know that they're
1-year-old child.
imaginary. We know.
A 1-year-old child, you could argue, acts on instinct as much as anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to get into the instinct versus free will argument because that's a whole other argument.
So,
Well, free
what about
will doesn't
sentience,
necessarily
then? Do golems
doesn't
have
mean the
sentience?
ability to project into a future state. I mean, as an adult, we know running out on the road could be dangerous because we've seen bad things happen to things running out on the road. A child has free will; they just don't have that scope of knowledge, the ability to project themselves into something they've seen before to not do it. You know, you can.
Okay.
I've only ever had one pet at a time, but if you had two, and one of them saw the other one doing something and it got in trouble for it, would it learn from that? I don't know.
I've
It would
seen
have some
dogs
consideration,
climb
I
on
guess.
each other. I have legitimately seen dogs rat each other out for for benefit. So,
Yeah.
Well,
Which one of you destroyed it? And they all just look at the one who did it.
yeah, it's happened. I've seen it with my sister's dogs and stuff like that, where one dog fucked around and the rest all
Or
just
even
sat and looked
the rest
at
of them
it.
will be looking at you, and the one that's not looking at you is the guilty one.
Yeah, there's that too. So the question becomes, how do you define a humanoid then, John?
a humanoid is a human-like creature with typically a biped, almost certainly a biped, with the ability to manipulate objects and the ability to communicate in a logical manner and form groups with like-minded humanoids, like-minded creatures of the same type.
So what if you saw something like what do you call them? A spriggan. I don't know if you have those.
Fey folk?
Yeah, I guess it is kind of like a fae. Yeah, it's like a thing made up of like trees and vines and shit like that, but it resembles a human. I would say that's humanoid because it's like roughly the same height. It has what you could define as a head, arms, and legs, and it walks upright, but it doesn't talk. It doesn't need to talk. It just does.
I'm trying to think back to some of the monster manual and its ilk entries. And didn't they classify that as being able to take a human-like form as opposed to a humanoid form?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, Spriggans are in the monster manual too. Yes, part gnome,
they
part
are.
giant.
Okay.
Yes.
They're giants in D&D?
They're part gnome, part giant.
Oh my.
I don't know if you can see that.
I'm
how I know
convinced the drugs were pretty damn good in Wisconsin in the 70s.
Yeah. So we've already got to the point where we can see that defining the terms humanoid and demi-human can be quite challenging.
Well,
hello,
no,
Mr.
because
Baker.
demi-human has human in it. Humanoid doesn't necessarily.
There still has to be human-like appearance related to a humanoid.
So, Mr. Baker, by that level, a statue is a humanoid.
Hello, Malachi.
Any action figures you have on your counters or whatever are humanoids.
One of my best friends is half Asian, half gnome.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, so here I've got here.
That was a hill giant on MM2. Sorry.
what in MM2? Sorry, Bear?
Straw Piglet says, some people think the MM2 cover is a Spriggan, right? I think it's a hill giant, isn't it?
I don't know what sort of giant it is. Whatever giant it is using its halberd.
Oh, someone says it's Fearbolg.
Fearbolg. Yeah. I mean, yeah, could be because Fearbolgs are in the Monster Manual too.
Okay, so in just remember, guys, in Mr. Baker's D&D games, any spell that can affect humanoids can affect statues. Be aware.
But is it a statue that was carved, or is it something that was petrified? Because there you got two different.
I asked specifically about statues, not petrified people, sir.
That's a whole other thing. Do you classify
nerdy
petrified
pedantry.
person as a statue?
Yes.
Nerdy pedantry. It's marvelous. It's a marvelous thing. It's what keeps these conversations going. The fact that we are all such pedants.
Well, I kind of look at the demi-human as a phrase. When we are talking in real life about others, we just say something like people, because everybody that's going to hear and understand us, for the most part, is going to be a person. Whereas if in game you're talking to only elves, you would call them elves. But if you've got some elves and some dwarves and some, whatever else, what other word would you use as a collective phrase to cover them all? Because if you just called them people, they may not care for that much.
Oi, dickheads.
Possibly, yes. Possibly, yeah. Yeah. And what would they think of the term demi-human if they were described? Yeah, I mean, I think Bear has got a point. If you were to go up to an elf and refer to it as a demi-human, they might well pull out its bow and shoot you.
Who cares?
Well, someone earlier in the chat had made a comment about how, well, they look human, so they could be half human. Well, not in any of the lore I've read, from Tolkien all the way down. I've never seen elves presented as offshoot of human.
No, though I would argue they look more human-like than your typical orc from D&D. Certainly old school orcs, not new school orcs.
We'll get onto that,
right.
won't we?
Oh, yeah, we are going to get onto that at some point, yes. Okay, the origins of humanoids and demi-humans. I don't think anyone can argue that pretty much almost all of them have their origins in mythology and have come, excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh, frog in throat. Oh. You have to just excuse me for a moment.
No worries. So as an adjective, having the appearance or character resembling that of a human. As a noun, especially in science fiction, a being resembling a human in its shape.
Is that simply it?
That's simply it from the Oxford Language Dictionary, my friend.
Okay. I think the key there is being as well. He specifies a being.
Which is kind of what my point was.
Yeah. Regarding golems and statues. And my throat is really, really not wanting me to do this. So the origins of the traditional humanoids. Mythology. That is certainly where they all began. Humans going back many hundreds, maybe thousands of years, believing that things lurked out there that wanted to do us harm, that fey creatures lived in the woods, that there were pixies at the bottom of the garden. And in all cultures, there are beings like this. Like Germanic cultures had kobolds, for example. Norse cultures had the dwarfs, or trolls, which were dwarf-like in Norse cultures. So it comes from mythology, and it made its way into fiction. Various authors, and through them into gaming. Excuse me.
That fucking blew my ears out.
Well, I think John's having a little bit of a cough. Needs to drink water.
No, it might be hay fever. Mine's been acting up.
Might be tuberculosis. He's a filthy lunger now.
It worked for Doc Holliday.
The old Daisy, if you do. Well,
Yeah,
we
It's
no
from
longer
his
friends.
days when he was younger, working as a chimney sweep, isn't it?
Oh,
Malachi or
chimney.
Malachi, however you want to pronounce it there, says there are dwarves in Africa. I know Native Americans had the Little Brothers and Sasquatch.
And there's the Moon-eyed people. There's the giants of the all over the place.
The Bible.
And then we just got into our own genetic stuff. We got Denisovians, and we've got what are the little ones from Southeast Asia called? They have a term for them. Florensis, human Florensis, or Homo Florensis. So, you know,
I was thinking bar girls, but okay, that's a different line of thought.
well, you know, same idea. LBFM. Well, that's your problem. You're drinking urine. There's your problem. Stop drinking urine.
If your urine is this color, you've got a
Right, I'm
problem.
coming.
You need to hydrate more.
Ah, yes. But yes, back to where we were. They've come through various adaptations in fiction, and D&D has basically picked them up from fiction. No matter what they bleat about having no Tolkien effect, having no Tolkien influences, they kept saying over and over again, I am certain that the orc/goblin is lifted from the work of Tolkien. You see
Not
the term, but
problem.
yeah, they're in Hobbit. In the Hobbit, the orcs
In the
are referred
Hobbit,
to as
yeah,
goblins.
but sure,
Yeah.
but the goblins existed before Tolkien ever wrote about them.
Yes, but the description of them in the Hobbit certainly is very similar to the description in D&D, in my opinion. And yet, goblin creatures in mythology have been all shapes and sizes.
Well, so elves have always been all shapes and sizes,
Yeah.
and tend more to be fairies than they ever did to be tall, blonde, enlightened beings. Thank you, Tolkien.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, D&D elves come from mythology.
Well,
D&D, apart from the naming of them,
yeah,
and dwarfs. I mean, D&D dwarfs are very much like Tolkien dwarfs. That you have your hill dwarf and your mountain dwarf, and the propensity for mining, the dourness, the expectations of the love of gold and metals and all that sort of stuff. Where did Tolkien get that from?
the Jews. He wrote the dwarves in his books as a representation of the Jews being in diaspora throughout Europe. That was like an actual thing he talked about in his letters. So you can look that up. That's not bullshit. That's him saying he was inspired by the concept of these people who were without a home, who were trying to find a home.
Yes, there was certainly some inspiration in there. Yes,
he said it, not me, man.
Both good and bad.
Yeah, but that's the problem. We must always remember the time at which people are writing things.
Yes.
It will color their stuff, and things that they seem to think are perfectly acceptable, later generations may not feel are so acceptable. And we condemn them.
He did say in one of his letters, didn't he, that he imbued them with a lot of very positive traits, such as their loyalty, their hard work, their dependability, those sort of things. So, I of course, yes, there are.
But
you're right.
We must keep in mind, Lord of the Rings is Hobbit created. Well, it's elf propaganda written by tricksy hobbitses. So it's not to be taken as literal. It's meant to be taken as allegorical, maybe.
It's real. It's real. It's real. It's real British history. British history.
The mod that I played, where I was a member of the Society of Morgul Mages, we all knew that Tolkien is the liar scribe. So we had to go back and retranslate most of his writings in our library in that game to reflect how history really went. Like the werewolf Chakaroth sacrificing himself to get rid of a Silmaril so it wouldn't fall into the hands of the pesky elf friends. So
that now we've got the origins of They've come through myth, through fiction, and into gaming, and to differing degrees, depending on the game you play, depending on the humanoid fey creature in question. But the main origin is mythology. Right.
But
I
were
want
we
to talk about
exposed to them first through mythology? Because for me, the first dwarves I ever saw was watching Snow White, and they were all miners, all 7 of them.
Yes.
We were
Yes.
playing D&D one time, and one of the players looked at one of our other players, and he's like, because Sean was playing a dwarf, and he goes, I can't remember what his name was, like, Thorgrak Nutsack or whatever, and he's just like, Thorgrak, sing us a dwarven marching song, and he just starts going, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. Fuck, the room, we died. Like, there was like 10 minutes of game lost just from us all laughing our asses off at the perfect timing. So where does he get it from? Where does Disney get their dwarves from?
Mythology.
I don't know. It's just that was the filter that I was first exposed to them through, and then later on when I read the Lloyd Alexander books, and you had Dolly, I always pictured him as that kind of a dwarf, and then when the cartoon came out, he was a little winged pixie looking thing, and it's like, that's not right.
But we all have different images. With fiction, we all have different images in our minds of what they'll look like. And if we read about them first, then our imaginations are not coloured by the images that we see them. I mean, and we will all make different. We will all, if we all read The Hobbit at the age of 8 or 9, we'll have all conjured up different images of what was happening. And that's what humans did for years and years. That's where mythology came from. Sort of humans conjuring up all these fantastical images in their minds through storytelling, probably through being drunk and eating dodgy mushrooms and passing stories down through from word of mouth through the years and years and years.
What was that corn blight that would cause hallucinogenics? They think it may be responsible for most, if not all, of the weird witch shit that was going on in the colonial America. It's this corn blight that is very hallucinogenic to humans and causes them to just trip balls and see shit that's not there. I can't remember what it's called. Ergot, thank you. Ergot poisoning. Thank you, Mark Hockman. Ergot. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, that's what they make LSD from. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's rye. That's a fungus that grows on rye that LSD originally came.
There was something with corn though. There's another one that's with corn.
Yeah.
In the same family or something. Yeah.
Well, and corn will spoil into alcohol as well. So it's
true. But I was reading a whole article where the guy was talking about like ergot and the witches, and like a lot of the stuff that the witches were accused of doing or seeing or saying is relatable to ergot hallucinations, like the idea of flying. Having never left their cell, but claiming they flew away to a dance with Satan, and like, well, you never left your cell, lady. Well, physically she never left her cell, but she was tripping balls out there somewhere,
I had a relative accused of witchcraft in Salem.
Nice.
He was on trial for he was supposed to be taking cannons and trading them for the release of prisoners of war. I don't remember if it was I think it was from the French, might have been the English, I don't remember. Anyways, he was friends with a lot of Native Americans along the coast. And he saw there was a group of them that were having some problems. So he sold the cannons, used the money to help them out. So the American government locked him up when he got back, for treason, for not helping release the prisoners of war he was supposed to. And while he was sitting in the courtroom, there were 3 women there that were accused of witchcraft. And they asked them, did anyone here coerce you or do anything, whatever? And one of them pointed at him and said, he's the one that did it. So he got locked up for witchcraft, at which point his friends from New York came and broke him out of prison, took him up there until everything was over. Then he went back and had his actual trial and was exonerated.
Nice.
I'm just going to bring up Malachi's comment here regarding the whole Mongol horde thing. There's no doubting that the idea of a horde of orcs was inspired by the Mongol horde, but it is. I think it's a misreading of his description of how they look regarding Mongols in general. Because when asked what an orc looked like, he described it as being, to a Westerner, the most extreme, was it the most distorted image of a Mongol? The most distorted one. So, not it's a Mongol, it's what a Westerner might, in his worst imagination, perceive a Mongol to look like. It's a very different.
So it's what Lovecraft thought about black people.
Possibly. But no. So I've always, but that quote, people have used that to accuse Tolkien of all sorts, and I think that is completely misconstruing his point. Maybe his words are clumsy, but maybe they're actually more precise than.
Why do people get offended by descriptive things, man? They're used to give you a sense
because
of what
they are overeducated, under-challenged, and want to seem clever. It's all fucking ego, dude.
Because they have absolutely zero power, and the only way they can feel powerful is if they are yelling and screaming about something. And since there's nothing to yell and scream about, they make shit up.
Plus, their parents or grandparents that raised them were fucking boomers who believe they stopped the Vietnam War and created civil rights and all that other bullshit that they take credit for. And what did they do? Protest and blockade and scream and rant and accuse. I'm Gen X. We just spent all day wondering if we were going to get nuked.
Right, so we're going to come on to specific humanoids now. And I'm going to start with the one that causes the most furore nowadays, because I'm going to do that, and that is the orc.
That's the new orc battle music, according to Watsy.
Yeah.
It's fucking sick. It's fucking sick. Have you seen all the new art they're putting out and what they've done with dwarves and orcs? It's sick. It's a fucking malady in their head.
Absolutely. I want to start off though with orcs from the beginning.
So the twisted
elf.
Orc.
In the Lord of the Rings, yes. In mythology, no.
Where do the orcs in mythology? Where do you find them? Talk about the Welsh thing.
I have a page up at the moment. The orc was a sort of hell devil in Old English literature.
Yes.
And the Orkney was a race of corrupted beings and descendants of Cain alongside the elf, according to the poem Beowulf. Tolkien adopted the orc from these old attestations, which he professed was a choice made purely for phonetic suitability of reasons.
Okay.
So, a hell devil was the original description of an orc.
Okay.
The original, the origin of an orc. And
more hit dice.
Yeah. But Tolkien took them to mean the same pretty much as goblins, because in The Hobbit, the term orc and goblin is used interchangeably.
But does it change by Lord of the Rings?
I don't know.
Yeah, because it's weird. It's hard to say, because if you look at the films, the goblins and orcs look very different, but related. Hey, Hungar. But I keep hearing, goblin and orc are the same damn thing, right? And it's like, okay.
The film, though, the film is an adaptation. It's Peter Jackson's reading and adapting of it. And we all read these things differently. Mage says by Lord of the Rings he gets the feeling that goblins and orcs are distinct.
So what was in Moria?
It's not specified though, is it? It's not specified. That's the thing. Are they goblins in Moria or are they orcs? Is it Saruman who has the army of orcs? And are they goblins in Moria? Are they different species? There are different breeds of orc, yes, in Lord of the Rings. Yes, very much so. Out of the hospital today, Hungar. Good. Orcs. The Hobbit certainly implies that orcs are bigger goblins. They're pretty much more the goblins of the Great Goblin and its kind are implied to be smaller and weaselier, but it's only an implication. It's only an implication.
What about
Tell me a
hobgoblins then?
We'll come to hobgoblins.
Okay.
We'll come to hobgoblins, but when Orc found its way into D&D, they became pigmen, and I think Elfbait's right when he thinks this comes from a description of them having porcine features, and David Sutherland, the artist, overemphasized those features into very much a pig head. Does anyone have the picture from the AD&D monster manual handy?
No.
No, I don't have any books in the room with me.
Because I think we all know the picture of how they were presented. I'm just finding it.
me.
I do. Okay. This is where you'll learn something. This is what an orc was in AD&D. This is how David Sutherland, the artist, presented them. I'm sorry, I'm quite slow at doing this.
Google search for Mexican orc ruffle.
Yeah, I don't like pig orcs.
There we go.
Wait a minute, those are Jabba's palace guards.
No, those were hobgoblins.
Those aren't orcs.
Those are Gamorreans.
But that is how AD&D's monster manual presented orcs.
And based on
Those are a fucking halfling.
based on those pictures, I always just assumed that an orc was somehow akin to an owlbear. It was a magical experiment that went horribly, horribly awry.
I know, Brian James, I'm being facetious.
Or maybe they read 1984 one time too many, and the orcs got up on the pigs got up on 2 feet.
Oh, you mean Animal Farm?
Yeah. Animal Farm. Or last, I don't know which one came out first, but he might have watched American Werewolf in London while his mind was in a susceptible state. And in the dream within a dream, he said, "Oh, those are orcs."
So they are human-sized. Their build is one of probably just of a fairly solid human, and they have big, long snouts. And second edition, pretty much, it wasn't quite to this extent, but wasn't madly different. If I can just an orc from the Monstrous Manual. Oh, well, hold on. I've got to reshare. I've got to reshare. Stop that screen and present a new one. This was a Monstrous Manual orc. Again, this is a 2E. This is a 2E orc. It's not that much different, is it? Really?
It's still not what I would think when I think.
They got the arms screwed up already.
Oh, they have. Yes.
Longer than the upper arm.
But facially, they've still got that snout and tusks, and they look like a sort of a.
I mean, like a pig and more like a Neanderthal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly like this piece of art. I will tell you that now. But it shows that the piggish sort of thing stayed. And it talks about orcs have slightly stooped posture, a low jutting forehead, and a snout instead of a nose. Though comparisons between this facial feature and those of pigs are exaggerated and perhaps unfair. Orcish snouts and ears have a slightly pink tinge. Their eyes are human with a reddish tint that sometimes make them appear to glow red when they reflect dim light sources in near darkness. Male orcs are about 5.5 foot to 6 feet tall. So once again, they are pretty much human-sized. They have piggy, hoggy features. and they're fairly grotesque. I don't know what orcs look like in 3rd and 4th edition because I didn't play enough of them. I just know what they've become in 5th edition as big, muscular, WWE style green men with tusks.
Oh no, that's an orc.
That's the World of Warcraft influence.
Yes.
It is. And
in fact, a lot of the garbage we're dealing with orcs these days and have been for the past few years is based on World of Warcraft humanizing them.
Good thing I never played it past like an hour.
There was a very good article. I don't know who wrote it. I haven't been able to find it in years, talking about the change in the illustrations of humanoids from the Monster Manual to the Fiend Folio to the Monster Manual 2.
Yep.
And there were like a couple of guidelines. He said every one of them went through these, and one of them, well, actually a couple of them you see on here. The chin is elongated, often pointed. The upper arm is smaller than the forearm. The nose is mutilated in one way or another. And there were other things that he went on, the angularity of the skull. But it got to the point, from my eyes, what he said in that article, and I hadn't even noticed it before that, is that almost every humanoid looks like almost every other humanoid in the later monster books. You know, if you look at the Grimlock and the Meanlock and, you know, all those different things in there, it's like...
So as you go through the iterations, there's less distinction between them?
Yes.
Yes. There's been a very definite move to humanize a lot of these sort of creatures, and orcs
Why do you
are
think
the
that
main
is,
one.
though? Is it to make it more relatable, or what?
There's certainly a school of thought that doesn't like the idea of nature overpowering nurture and considers it to be wrong to have creatures that are evil and capable of some sort of free thought, and thus they're being humanized to drag them away from their evil origins. And I think it's all part of the same thing.
So they're trying to humanize every race or class or whatever.
There's a lot of humanization going on, and there's always been a bit of a clamor to be able to play monstrous races, and I think it's very much. It gathered a lot of steam with the Drizzt effect about the whole idea of a redeemed drow, and people wanting to play good orcs and good drow and not be shoehorned into playing evil, because they didn't believe that intelligent races should be by their very nature evil. It's a right old can of worms you get into with this sort of thing. My favorite orcs are these. I will say that now. Those are my favorite orcs.
One of those Warhammer.
No.
That looks like Fighting Fantasy.
No.
Merp. Dragon magazine, I think.
Merp.
No, it's Merp.
It's Merp.
It's the cover. It's the cover of Denizens of the Dark Wood, a module for Merp. And I think those orcs look absolutely I think they look absolutely. Who's off? Who's off?
Oh, Logan's leaving.
Oh, cheers, Chris. I think those orcs look absolutely magnificent. That's what I picture. Orcs as being like.
I honestly like the LOTR movies. I love the orcs. Like, you can look at them and see I can see the elf in them. I can see where they would have been from elves, and I really like that. I thought that was a great design choice. And I like the fact that they all look like various forms of, birth defect and stuff like that. Like they're a dirty, corrupt, horrid race,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to say,
come on, mute yourself.
Sorry.
I mean, there is a push to move a lot of certainly some of the more intelligent monstrous races away from them being merely enemies, merely monsters for players to seek out and kill. And even back in old school D&D and AD&D, it wasn't 100% certain that you would fight every tribal orc you came across. Even though they were evil, they did have the ability to negotiate. They had the ability to form allies. Whether they would stick to their alliances and keep their promises is another matter, because all that matters to the orc is the orc.
Yeah, they would form alliances with you if it benefited them, right?
Yes, yes.
My group 2 sessions ago, when they were on their way to the temple itself in the swamp, one of the wandering monsters I rolled up was an ogre, and they ended up befriending it. You know, that everything else they killed along the way, they fed to it. So they had an ogre that basically escorted them to the mouth of the cave, living on a diet of sturges and alligators.
Thing is, Mark Hawkman, where I sort of disagree here, I mean, I don't believe they have complete free will, because I think there is something in the orcish DNA that makes them naturally predispositioned towards being aggressive and evil. It doesn't mean they're all doing evil deeds all the time, but I believe it does mean that they will give in to those urges, will overcome them inevitably at some point. So is that a fair point? Thus, there's never a truly good orc. Everyone is silent. Everyone is silent.
Well, sure there is. The only good orc's a dead orc, right?
Yeah. Are humans innately evil? I think we're innately. I think innately we have something called compassion, and an orc does not.
How do you know? How do you know? That's the problem, right? We are, from a human point of view, orcs are unabashedly evil.
Yeah.
From an orc point of view, humans are unabashedly evil. They take over their territories. They build castles and communities in lands that were once orc roaming and free range stuff and blah blah blah. It's this whole game we wind up playing of what is evil, and
Yes.
unless we have an absolute definition of what is evil that does not have cultural conjections upon it, we can. Iman, for the love of God, brother, you're breathing heavy, buddy.
I think for the.
Who is that?
Is that my fan?
Might be.
Let's see.
Do you have an orc in the room with you, growling?
Yeah,
That might have been it.
might have been it.
I think, Bear, though, the vast majority of RPGs has a human or human adjacent being as the central character for most player characters. There are exceptions, and of course you could play an all orc campaign where you would see humans as the evil ones. But I would like to see if that I'd find it quite interesting. But in the short term, in the long term, it might become quite tedious. So don't.
Have you ever seen the show Community?
I've seen the infamous episode, if you know.
So you've seen the D&D episode, and there's that brilliant moment where they're meeting the goblins, and what comes out of Brita's mouth? I want to talk to the goblin. I want to know why they're angry. I want to know if maybe this is their ancestral home in this forest, and we're the encroachers and the interlopers. That's where this argument will end up at all times, right? Is this? Mm-hmm. It's fascinating philosophical argument. It's mental masturbation. It's lots of cool things. When you're running a game, and it goes nowhere. And when you're running a game, it's actually antithesis to having a good game or a fun game.
Yep.
Yes. But it gets us talking on streams like this.
So the barbarian needs to just go up and kill one and say discussion over.
I'm sorry, barbarian is a racist term.
I don't care.
I would prefer the term outland warrior. Thank you.
Keep talking. I'll tell you when you get to the point I give a shit.
Oh, I don't think you ever give a shit. I can hear it in your accent.
Pretty much, no.
The term barbarian was originally used by the Greeks to describe anyone who didn't speak Greek.
Barb, because that's what they sounded like.
Yep.
Yep.
And that was it. That's where the term barbarian comes from, in case anyone ever wondered. It simply means non-Greek speaker originally.
Yep. It doesn't mean anything about the Barbary Coast, and it doesn't mean anything about beards.
Nope. Just means non-Greek speaker. So, orcs. Of course, have we all seen the artwork that has caused the recent strop? Have you?
Come on.
Oh yes, the mariachi orcs.
It's insane. Two of them are wearing sombreros, and one of them has the thin mustache. It's like, what the fuck?
It's Cheech and Chong on steroids.
They spent the last 10 years telling us we're racist because orcs are black, and then they do this, and it's like, what the fuck? This has got to be either a prank or there's a goal to all of this shit. I don't know what it is, but there's a goal in there somewhere.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Gee, thanks, Harvey Dent.
Here it is, people. For those in chat who have not yet seen it, enjoy.
You know, they have a +4 chunkla of decapitation. They will use it against you. Your chunkla will fly at you. You'll not see it coming. And your head should be off.
The thing is, to me, there are only two on this image that could be construed as having a Mexican look about them.
Really? Would you like me to break it all down for you?
Please do. Please do.
All right, so you got the fat mamacita up at the top. That is a stereotypical Latina thing. You've got
I didn't know that.
You've got two of them with sombreros, one of which has a cheesy sort of mustache, which is really like that's just the tell. And that kid's wearing essentially what could be construed as a orc poncho. So there's your big four warning shots right out of the gate. Then add in the cacti and the vaguely southwestern North American Baja landscape, and it's kind of like there's more proof for this making them Mexicans than there is for orcs being black.
Definitely.
What are the two animals on the Mexican flag, and what do you see all over on this picture?
Eagles.
We have a Mark Hawkman. Mark Hawkman is going to put the world, going to put us straight, aren't you, Mark Hawkman?
Conquistador is no orc; he is a fairy.
Sorry, I had my thing. Anyway, I actually very carefully studied the whole thing with the picture.
What did you glean from it?
Well, several things that are actually certain aspects of it are actually very, very specific to a specific time period in U.S. Southwest. Looking at all of these costumes here, every single one of the costumes they show these characters wearing would be 100% period correct for a Zorro TV show.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. Even the Falcons are period correct.
Yeah.
Zorro, the Orcish blade.
And what's Zorro's era? Late 19th, early 20th century? That period?
1800s.
1800s. So
I mean, like even
early
the
Wild
hat
West.
that the one is on the right is almost identical to the one you see Zorro wearing, except that Zorro's hat was black and this one's not.
Well, that would be racist, see.
Eli.
Well, as Don Diego de la Vega, he can't wear the exact same hat. So when he's going out in town as Don Diego de la Vega, he actually wears a brown hat. So it's actually even closer.
So these could be Texans, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like the whole Mexican thing. Yeah, exactly.
No one's shooting anyone. They can't be Texans. They could be Asians.
Well, I mean,
Doc Flamingo's comment.
Are we certain that they didn't shoot people like an hour ago?
Well, I don't see any guns is the problem. And I don't see the open containers. Can you imagine the gun rack on the back of the horse?
I see an utterly unusable axe.
Absolutely, that thing's a fucking road sign.
Yeah.
That is.
Oh my god!
That is one of those reasons.
They cut away the white part of a one-way sign and strapped two of them together.
That is one of those reasons why some people suspected that this might be AI art, because no one human would draw an axe like that.
Does that horse in the back have really short legs? He might be a lowrider.
Yeah. Well, if you look closely at the
I hear the battle cry of the orcs approaching. Arriba la raza!
Yeah, really.
Where do I go?
Don't know.
If you look closely at the horses, though, the horses have the same style of blanket that you would often see the Mexicans use in the old days for horse saddling. So, like the entire like midsection of the horse has a blanket under the saddle.
I'm sorry, Mage's music stole it. Can you hear the drums, Fernando?
Yeah, that was good.
That is good. I envy that one. I wish I had thought of that one.
So, I think this image is a very, very clumsy, short-sighted image. I think they're attempting to very much humanize the orc and try and bring in a lot of human diversity tropes, stereotypes into an image, and they've just done a very, very clumsy job of it.
Yeah,
I can see the case for it being AI art easily. I can see the case for it being AI art that was then touched up by an artist after to make it more,
Yeah.
Erase all of the obvious errors.
Yeah. So, anyway, we've caused enough fuss with orcs. Shall we move on to a different race?
Sure, you're gonna move on to the dwarves because I'm just shipping that couple so hard these days.
I was personally hoping for Nagas, but hey, whatever.
Well, no, I was going to move on to goblins.
Oh.
Because the main point of this stream is really to talk about humanoids rather than what I would term demi-humans.
I don't know what that is.
So
Yeah,
the goblin. Let me just find the oldest art I know of goblins. Goblins to me are probably the finest of the humanoid enemies. I love them to bits.
They're the workhorse of the humanoids.
I think they are a great enemy, and they can be manipulated as well. But again, they're not to be trusted. But they're certainly not the organized threat that orcs can be. They're more haphazard. They're more I don't know if the right term, but I picture them as slightly more alien to humans than orcs in the way they.
I think Pathfinder probably of all the goblins in the fantasy games, I think the Pathfinder goblins would be probably the ones I like the most. I just like what they've done with them as a concept.
Let's. I'm just going to dig out.
Well, one way that I personally conceptualize these things is like, you know how they have the old good, evil, law, chaos two-axis grid? Well, when I was writing various races for my own personal fictional setting, I would place the culture of each race somewhere in that grid. And orcs and goblins tended very strongly towards chaos.
But do they? They're tribal, right? I mean, ultimately, they're tribal societies. So from our point of view, it's chaotic. But from their point of view, there's a strict laws that they're adhering to. There's a strict social hierarchy. There's rules for everything they do. They're just not the same rules we would use. So to us, it appears as chaos, which brings us back to the good, evil, law, order, chaos, order argument, which is basically, as a human, we might think these things are chaotic, but an orc might not. An orc might think it all makes perfect sense, and he's following all the rules by killing Thragak.
The idea I had, though, is that while they do have laws, these laws are
Hawkman, you've gone quiet.
Oh, I thought that was my internet again. Holy shit.
That's what
Yeah, I
wondering.
was waiting to see if anybody moved.
I think your connection's dropped out, or at least your mic may well have dropped out, Mark Hawkman. So this is the goblin that many of us would have experienced first. Yeah, a great bit of trampier art. They have, I mean, they are smaller. They are 4 foot tall. But look, this is something I never really paid much attention to.
Lawful evil.
Lawful evil. So they are meant to be more organized. Certainly in D&D terms. They were chaotic in basic D&D because it was law, neutrality, and chaos with no good, neutral, evil axis. But with the addition of the 9-point alignment system,
Hear the fucking microwave.
What?
Oh, Iman has connection issues when someone in his house turns the microwave on.
Yeah, I can fucking hear it and all.
I'm sorry, that's just funny to me. I apologize for laughing.
So
You and every single other person I've ever played or talked to online.
Have you ever seen the movie Christmas Vacation? Where
No.
Cousin Eddie explains how he got the money to get the cool camper vans because he had the metal plate in his head, and every time Marge would turn on the microwave, he'd piss his pants and forget who he was for about 30 minutes.
Yep.
So when you said the microwave interrupts your thing, it made me think immediately of that moment. Sorry.
Well, thankfully, I'm not pissing myself.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
yeah.
What I was trying to say earlier, though, is that a chaotic civilization is a relative term because you can't go full on chaos and actually have a civilization.
Correct.
If everyone just literally follows their own personal code of whatever, you're not going to have a city. You're going to have a handful of people. Or more, a full-on chaos thing. Actually, the only way I could conceive of a proper civilization being like that is that trope of having like 50 huts scattered through a forest, and that being this race's equivalent of a city is because no one's willing to work together for anything bigger than their own personal dwelling.
There you're seeing me scroll through these various. This is rather than get my copy of the Monstrous Manual out, I do have PDF. But goblins didn't change much. Goblins did not change much. Again, so we see the continuity between both forms of AD&D. To me, there's not a lot of difference between those two.
Bandy leg bastards.
But I love goblins. Oh, we have an Eli back.
All right, I'm gonna try this again.
There we go. Are you a goblin fan, Eli?
As long as they're not green. You Brits fucked that all up with your Warhammer.
What's wrong with them being green?
Works for Kermit.
They're not. Goblins are not Kermit the Frog.
The Games Workshop Orc and Goblin has dominated the industry ever since they came out because D&D had them all kinds of orange and red and rust-colored and everything.
Yes.
Well, I mean, Kermit as a mythological creature absolutely makes sense. Or I guess monster manual creature, sorry. But, I mean, not a goblin, but definitely something in the monster manual.
So, the goblin has changed a lot less than the orc throughout D&D's history. And I would say in Middle-earth, in MERP, there's no distinction between the two. Apart from the fact that you can have orcs of varying power levels and varying degrees. And I think that describes the differences. A first or second level orc, which is largely going to be unarmored, will be smaller and weaker, is really closer to what Tolkien would describe as being a goblin, as in the Great Goblin and his men, whereas the more powerful, more militaristic, higher level orcs, where they get to sort of 4th or 5th level and wear decent armor, and they become a real threat to a party. They are really very tough in MERP. Those are closer to the orc, or maybe even the hobgoblin of D&D. But certainly later editions of 5th edition D&D, the goblin to me is still very, very similar, and it hasn't had the same makeover that the orc has had. Is that purely down to World of Warcraft, do you think?
I'm just confused by this comment in chat.
One thing I've noticed, and it might be the World of Warcraft influence, is that goblins at some point in the not too distant future got massive ears and looked like gremlins from the movie Gremlins, the evil ones that spawned later on. To me, they look a lot like that.
You can thank GW for that one also.
Well, I mean, the fluffy ones in the movie Gremlins are actually called Mogwai, not Gremlins.
No, not Mogwai. I mean the Gremlin ones.
Yeah, but like the actual like Gremlins in that movie, yeah, they like have these big floppy ears and spindly, scaly arms and legs, and rather large eyes too.
There's a game shop that actually they went out of business. They had two what were supposed to be life-sized goblins that stood about 3 foot tall. And the clothing on them reminded me of pirates. They had these great big, long, kind of floppy, kind of pointy ears with a bunch of earrings and stuff. And it's like, okay, that looks cool, but that's not a goblin in any game that I've ever played. And I didn't know if that was a World of Warcraft goblin or something or what.
Well done, Yog.
That's all right.
I think goblins are less changed in D&D. We're talking about D&D. Because really the orcs changing was just really more of a poster child effect. And so they just kind of they could lead with the orcs and just leave everything else alone. Because for example, Nulls, which you may not be getting to later, but just to draw a comparison, Nulls got worse. They became Hellspawn instead of just like naturally occurring hyena men. But part of that was to allow them to be insane and cruel and kill and be killable without threat too. So
I think Nulls are the one thing that proves to me that not everything in 5th edition has been softened. I think Eli is right in the sense that Nulls have, if anything, have been made to become more and more demonic over time.
And even in 5th edition orcs, I'm a little late to the orc conversation, but you have to look. If you look at the overarching quantity of representation of orcs in 5th edition, most of them are still, despite all the quibbling over actual alignment, they're still presented as savage folk who are often half-breeding with demons and, berserking and cults of Grumsh who gouge out their eye and all of that. That's still all there in 5th edition, like in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and stuff like that. They go into that. So I believe there's a lot of lip service that's played towards humanizing the humanoid species, but in practice, it doesn't happen much. There's a few like really outstanding cases, and then there's the rest of them.
That's true.
And the goblins just didn't get that.
Well, no. I mean, like the Dark Elf example is that the actual aesthetic of Dark Elves didn't change over the years. It's how much people wanted to try having them as good guys. That's it. That's the only thing that changed with Dark Elves. It's because like Dark Elves
they went from having jet black skin to purple skin.
Well, okay, there's that too, I suppose.
And that's only some of them still.
And because like if you look at the old Norse myths that apparently inspired Dark Elves, is they were actually depicted as having coal black skin. That's like kind of like oily and glossy or something.
Yeah, I mean, as I've already mentioned, Dark Elves got the Drizzt effect, though before that, I think Unearthed Arcana went some way towards normalizing the Dark Elf.
Illustrate. There was this one book where they introduced the idea that the Dark Elves, while most of them have Lilith as their patron deity, some of them have Elistray as their patron deity instead.
Was that before or after the publication of Unearthed Arcana, though? Because in 1985,
That was after Unearthed Arcana because that came in with the books.
Yeah.
But
in 19,
Forgotten Realms thing too.
even that wasn't bad because that was sort of the kind of flip around of the secret society of witches, kind of on the edge of society for the Drow. You know, you had this little cluster of, you know, Drow that would go out into the woods and pray to their obscure goddess and have their little covens, and it kind of mirrored, you know, how we think of witches in human society. But I think you're right. The erosion there started with Unearthed Arcana because they put them in there as a playable PC race.
Yes, they did. Yes, and they did suggest that there might be outliers in that section of Unearthed Arcana.
And players just love playing the outlier.
Oh, they do.
Boy, do they ever.
Of course they do. Right, my sound is at the moment my sound is absolutely horrible at the moment, so I'm going to reboot my my headset, and there are issues with it coming back on, so I might have to reboot my computer. So behave yourselves.
Nope.
No promises.
You sound fine to me.
Like, you all sound bad
Me
to
too,
me. That's
but-
the thing.
Oh.
Hey, be nice. Come on, man. I'm just gathering together all the images from the West, my campaign World of Goblins, to sort of show what goblins are in my world. Just, you know, because it's easier to explain it visually, I think, at the end of the day, since we are talking about visuals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have to wait for John to reconnect because he has to approve my screen sharing. And I'm just doing a last pass to make sure I didn't miss anything that stood out.
So this going back to the orc art that you showed while we're in holding pattern, I wasn't here to comment on that. I hope honestly that is just there as an example in the book. Like, look, here is a way, whether it's dumb or not. Everybody wants different things in their games, so that's fine. I'm okay with that, and it's okay to provide an example of how something can be different. And that's cool, especially if that's somewhere tucked into the player's handbook, which is supposed to be sort of the generic rules kind of a thing. But, I mean, ultimately, we can all ignore whatever we want out of the game. But
Yes, we can. And that's what matters more than anything else, is remembering we can ignore everything, including the entire 6th edition of D&D.
Yes.
The what?
the new 5.5,
Don't know what you're talking about. Never heard of it. Doesn't
What?
exist.
you can grumble about it all you want.
See, I'm ignoring it.
But,
No,
I
it
mean, there's
doesn't.
actually
It's figment of your imagination.
for fuck's sake.
5.5 wasn't that the standard gun on a destroyer in World War II?
Yeah, you guys.
We're just fucking with you, Eli.
I know, but
John, are you back? John, I'm sharing a screen with you. If you want to add it up.
They've actually added some stuff into the new edition that is making it a little bit more complex and interesting. So I'm
I've actually seen some of the videos where they're talking about some of the class changes and stuff that are very interesting, very neat. It's just all the other shit that gets packaged with it that makes me go,
yeah, like they brought a form of weapon mastery back into it. So,
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
although you
Excellent.
sound worse than you did before.
Do I?
Oh, now you sound fine. Maybe you were just too close to your mic before.
I probably was. I was very close. But no, yeah, I'm back. Things have sorted themselves out. It's very humid here, so I think that might be causing the issue. Anyway, here we have a picture being. Ooh, what's this? There. You've shared a piece of art.
It's a very nice blank.
Eli is gone.
I'm here.
Okay,
No, he's
can you
there
hear
it
me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
Can hear you,
look,
yes.
it's
Sorry.
female Gollum.
This is why I'm getting a new
Yeah.
computer. So in the West, the goblins, you will find wild goblins, but they're rare. But goblins have become a second-class citizenry. They're the underclass of most of the civilized world in that they live in sewers. They live, they're urchins. They're street garbage, right? But one of the things I wanted to get right was that they do not have uniform appearance. They can look different from each other in lots of different ways. Some are, better than others. Some are, much better than others, clearly. And, it's just the whole idea of having these, these creatures that are existing in your world that everybody tends to overlook, think are evil or a nuisance, and just, are there. And it's a fun thing. And it's something that you guys didn't get to do in the Codex Albani because there are no goblins. I love this picture, by the way.
A handful
that
of
nose,
those ones
holy
that
shit.
he scrolled past looked almost more like elves than goblins to me.
Well, the whole idea is that they have a common origin point, and that's why. So
I
you can
see.
nitpick as much as you like, but get into the lore.
Which is good, because if you really want to look at it mythologically, they're all interchangeable anyway. There's elves,
Exactly.
dwarves, goblins.
Well, I mean, Tolkien's concepts of them was that none of the evil races in his work were actually originally created to be evil. They were corruptions of some other race.
Anyway, there you go. I just wanted to share that with you, John, because you play in the world.
Yeah, but
Excellent,
Tolkien didn't
excellent.
invent goblins, so.
No, that's true. That's true. But Mahotman is right that the evil race in Tolkien's world were corruptions of
Yes, absolutely.
other races. Yes.
Morgoth and all that fun stuff. But the point is that I'm not running a Tolkien world, so I don't give a shit about that. I'm running my own world where things have their own connections and stuff like that. And the good professor can fuck off up the model village as far as I'm concerned when it comes to my world.
I
That
mean,
is
if you
really
really
good,
want to get into it, he was just creating his version of classic mythological.
Exactly.
So,
Yes. He was creating a mythology for England. That was his purpose.
Close your eyes and
Right.
think of England, darling.
Yes. Yes. Were dragons corruptions? Ooh.
I don't believe they were.
That is actually an interesting thing, because the fact that if you dig deep enough into Tolkien's lore, and yes, there are many places on the internet where you can find hour-long dissertations on this one, and I've read/watched several of those. Tolkien never actually states outright where dragons come from. However, he does make several rather interesting things as commentary on dragonkind, and that the first beings that we would think of as dragons in Tolkien's world, in universe oldest, that is, were actually worms who couldn't fly. They're large, scaly creatures who had fire breath, but they didn't have the ability to fly as well. And that somehow Morgoth mixed them with some other species and gave them the ability to fly.
Well, there we go.
Cool.
There's an orange. And
So where I was going with this, though, is that the idea here is that they're actually a combination of several different things and not a corruption of a single creature.
And the thing is, I mean, the image we have of dragons, and dragons are one of those sort of creatures in any. I mean, we're off topic here, it's like meant about humanoids, but dragons in any RPG, even though what Brian says here, they are different in every world, the image that is conjured up by the word dragon in the mind of most players, I think will be very consistent, because they have those clear mythological origins. We've all heard of St. George slaying the dragon. It's one of the most commonly sort of told mythological tales.
And most players, if you tell them that it's something that looks kind of like Smaug, they immediately know what you mean.
Yes. So that I think there's less, even though I think there's less leeway with how dragons are portrayed in RPGs. I mean, there can be differences in size, coloration, temperament, and all that sort of stuff. And you have got the Chinese dragons as well. Yes, I mean, yes, they are. Okay, I've just completely blown myself out because Chinese dragons are different, but they can still fly.
Well,
So
okay, so dragons are crocodiles, right? Like that's the first thing we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
The entire concept of the dragon in mythology comes from ancient people in the Southeast Asia dealing with fucking crocodiles and what a nightmare those things were to them. And I'm sure you'll get the same thing with alligators. If you go into South America and stuff like that, you'll get equal legends about them that resemble that. So that's number one. Number two, I fucking hate D&D dragons because color coding your dragons is the most annoying thing I've ever seen in my life. Like when I was a kid, it was cool. Now as an adult, I'm like, really? Color-coded dragons.
I'm not personally a fan of the color coding. However, the idea of giving dragons elemental associations is something I find to be a good idea, even if it doesn't necessarily track in a straightforward linear sense the way the color coding did.
Yeah, the idea that the white dragon that is like a polar dragon and breathes out clouds of intense cold. You've got
It's a fun gameable concept, and that's really what it is. It's
I just don't like it.
That's the thing. I mean, you can always change it too.
Which is really funny when your players still think it's a color-coded dragon world system. So they see a silver dragon and think, "Oh, it must be good." Well,
I mean, when you look in mythology for examples of dragons and dragon-like creatures, you can find some very interesting ones. Like there was this one French legend that apparently inspired the D&D Tarrasque, or at least lent its name to it. Is this heavily armored thing that's shaped more like a bullfrog than what we normally think of as a dragon. It did have the ability to breathe fire, but it also had the ability to create tidal waves.
I do want to say, I did forget to say, Doc Flamingo, thank you for your contribution. I should have mentioned that sooner, but thank you for the $5.
Should I pull it? Summon my inner Saxius and get us back on topic?
Yeah, we can. Yes, let's go back on topic. Okay, so goblins have largely been left alone. What about kobolds or kobolds?
So what do you prefer first, dog kobolds or dragon kobolds?
I was talking about that with Car earlier.
What? There's two types.
See, my favorite look for kobolds is to make it so that they're physically kind of sort of have like dog-shaped heads that are scaly and not furry.
Well, my image of kobolds, they are essentially Germanic goblins. That is their mythology. They are goblins from German mythology.
Yeah.
And their name derives from cobalt, or does cobalt derive from goblin? German for
cobalt actually comes from the kobold.
Does it? Okay. Yeah, it's the other way around to what I was thinking then. But my image comes from my first exposure to D&D, because I'd never heard of Germanic myths when I was 11 years old and got my first D&D set. I got the Mensa basic set, which specifically describes them as dog-like. So for me, they've always been dog-like.
It's interesting, as when I was spawning on the Discord earlier, the original monster manual listing, which was my first encounter with the kobolds, says nothing about them being dog-like at all.
It's the picture shows them with a dog-like head. Though,
that's the only thing. And I mistakenly answered Helicar's question, and I think it was probably rhetorical, but incorrectly as a why, and then he corrected me as when. Like with the kobolds and the orcs, you can clearly see that they took whatever briefs they had and went very literally with them. Because there's an earlier interpretation of the kobold. I think it might be the white box, the ODD one, that talks about them yapping like dogs, but that's the only mention of them yapping like dogs. Yeah, and if you read that description on there for Monster Manual, there's nothing in the description that says they look like dogs. It just says they have scaly skin, they have horns, and they have tails. Much like with the orcs, it doesn't say anything about them looking like pigs. It just says that they have pink noses and pink ears that are marked as a gradient from their regular like blues and dark color combination. And so I find it interesting that, and we also know that a lot of those early illustrations done for D&D were not artistically sourced.
No, quite.
And
But this is-
I didn't read the description so much as looked at the pictures. I mean, it took me 40 years to actually go back and read that ogres are supposed to look like some kind of crazy circus clown with their colors.
Well, that's the ogre mage, isn't it?
No, the actual ogre, because I painted a miniature, and it's like, I should check and make sure I'm getting this right. And the colors they had for them are like, really? This looks like something Sid and Marty Krofft had on a bad acid trip.
the worst that you talking about the Morkoth?
No, ogres. If you look up the description of an ogre in the Monster Manual, it's ridiculous.
To say the Morkoth in the Monster Manual looks like an actual Sid and Marty Krofft creation. But
this was the first ever description I had of Kobold, because this was the first D&D I was ever.
That's Begme, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty well after all of the other earlier descriptions.
Yeah. This was 1983, the 1983 edition. So for me, I've always picked them as this description: small, evil, dog-like men, scaly, rust brown skin, and no hair. Yeah, but sometimes at third edition they became more reptilian, I think is the description.
Yeah, third edition, they became some kind of weird relation to dragons.
Yeah, and in second edition, they went to looking like bug-eyed humanoids with little horns.
Now that depends on which
doggishness.
That depends on which book you've got, because
I'm going by the Monsters Compendium. I mean, obviously, the art varied, because in AD&D, the art for kobolds, orcs, goblins varied by artist.
Yes, because I mean that's the second edition one I've got, which is the Monstrous Manual, and I mean that's the AD&D kobold, and you can see, dog-like. There are dog-like features. Very much so. I mean that is a dog-like snout. It looks. My dog has a nose at that point on her face. Her ears are floppy rather than sticky-uppy, but.
Now,
there's a doggishness there.
This monstrosity is the one that's in the complete book of Humanoids, and it's supposed to be a kobold.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about there. They kind of go to being that kind of bug-eyed humanoid, but they still have the horns.
And this is the image I think this is a horrible piece of art. But
that's
certainly
that's the Dieter Lisi art, yeah.
But there's still that sort of that snout is there. But yeah, the general posture is starting to look a little bit more reptilian to me. The general demeanor.
You got those big old lizard-fingered hands, so they can walk.
Yeah.
Or like werewolf claws, because like you have like the finger, then you have like another 2 or 3 inches of claw sticking out of it or something.
Brian, I don't have that to hand. A picture of Barklings. No. I can see
humanoids that have the overly long forearms and the tiny upper arms. I wonder how they can even lift a mug of ale, because with that lever, the weight of something small at the end of those hands is going to be more than their poor biceps can handle.
That's a good thing. Physics in reality don't apply to fantasy otherwise, because then dragons can't fly, giants can't hold themselves up.
Yeah, that's true.
And most of the underground civilizations would have been buried in mud eons ago.
So, but by the time sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th edition comes along, they're very much reptilian. They speak Draconic. They're described as serving dragons. They're commonly found with dragons.
They've explained why
they're screen to you, John. That's a bark. Those are the barklings.
Yeah,
Would
right,
it be fair
okay.
to say they're like the Argonians from Skyrim?
That was done specifically to avoid copyright when the whole OGL thing came out.
They're cool though.
I don't know Skyrim.
You know who those guys really, really remind me of the most? The Antikins from Star Trek.
Yeah, no, their heads are different.
No.
But I get what you're going for. I see what you're saying, but I'm going to say, yeah, I don't. When I look at them, I don't think of an Antikin. I think of that knight from Labyrinth.
Oh, yes.
I feel more that way. But yeah, I think they're cool.
So the switch to making them part of making them draconic in later editions was to, as far as I understand it, the designers thought that having kobolds and goblins in the humanoid spectrum was redundant, so they shifted them over to being the lowest form of like draconic thing. So you didn't have like this redundancy between goblins and kobolds at the bottom there.
I'm just looking up the image from Deities and Demigods because I've just seen what Dave Mills has mentioned, and yes, Kurtulmak, the deity of the kobolds in Deities and Demigods, does have a somewhat reptilian look to him, and this is Errol Otis's depiction.
Yeah, and he's shown next to other kobolds, isn't he? And he looks different from them, doesn't he? Because there's another illustration of him doing. There's another illustration off to the side of him showing kobolds how to, like, trap with a scorpion or something like that.
It doesn't look all that different to me, and in fact, their facial features look more like sort of almost more ape-like than dog-like in the other picture. But is that a David S. LaForce one? He wasn't a great artist. He was a good mapper, but wasn't a great artist. But the Otis one does look very.
I'll send you a picture on Discord, John.
But then again, it is Errol Otis, so.
Yes. Okay,
Which is
let's have a
cool
look.
as his art is, he's a surrealist. So.
A Skyrim Argonian. How big are the Argonians in Skyrim?
Oh, they're human size.
They're more like Dragonborn.
Okay.
I mean,
So that
maybe a little larger than humans, but not much.
Yeah, they're like Dragonborn. In fact, or I should say, Dragonborn are probably derived from Elder Scrolls Argonians.
Cheers, Mage. Because kobolds have always.
You are the Dragonborn, and you can be whatever race you want.
Well, no, I mean Dragonborn, as in D&D Dragonborn.
Yeah, who are basically just humanoid dragons.
Oh, okay.
It is literally a callback to Gary Gygax's earliest remarks about odd character races, in that you can let a player character play a dragon, but make sure that it is scaled to the rest of the PCs. And that's exactly what a Dragonborn is.
Okay. See, I've got all these modern ideas because I'm younger and I'm a video gamer by nature.
I mean, Dragonborn are relatively modern within your lifetime, at least.
Well, see,
in Skyrim, you play as the Dragonborn, and you can.
Well, that's a title as opposed to an actual race of people.
But you have the powers of certain dragons.
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing to remember though is that a lot of newer fiction is inspired by older fiction. And if you don't understand what the inspiration is, you might mistake it for being a novel idea when it's really something that's a tired rehash of something that's 40 years old.
I'm sure the visuals for the Dragonborn in D&D were inspired by the Draconians and Dragonlance originally.
Yes, of course it will. Yeah.
It's not that necessarily that I thought that the Dragonborn from Skyrim was the first iteration. It's just the first time I'd ever come across that word as a thing.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So then when I hear Dragonborn, I think that, and then obviously you guys think something different. It's good to know what the difference is.
I think of several things, honestly.
I mean, just going to say regarding this image you sent me here, imagine that, but half the size, and
that's a kobold,
and not wearing armor, just scaly skin.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, they've really, all the way into 5th edition, but it started earlier, but now kobolds are really the skeevy little minions you expect to be running around dragon lairs, because they worship dragons, they aspire to be dragons, they are born from dragon eggs, as far as I understand it, or something like that.
All right.
Similarly, or something like that. But they
But-
really have turned them away from being originally another goblinoid, which is what they were. Even though they never looked like the rest of the goblinoids, they were still considered part of the goblinoid races.
What set them aside really was their propensity to be little tricksters.
Mhm.
That was that. I mean, it's Tucker's kobolds, isn't it? That sort of the idea that kobolds will build networks of tunnels and traps.
Right. Aren't kobolds the race that spawned the no take candle meme? Because they would have that candle stuck to the top of their hat. As
That's the
only
World
light
of
source.
Warcraft kobolds, though.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because the World of Warcraft kobolds are kind of doggish, but they're very much kind of miners and stuff like that. But no, yeah, the D&D kobolds were. I mean, it even goes back to Kurtlemak. He talks about teaching his people how to, do the tricks, the traps, the poisoning, and kobolds were that excuse to use every wackadoo, Rube Goldberg type of a trap in a dungeon you ever wanted to. Like I've had kobolds, chucking beehives at people, or dropping them out of, and they talk about how kobolds will drop baskets of scorpions and stuff out of holes on their people's heads and everything. So,
Or I mean, I've seen some really, really screwball ones that people came up with for being low tech, non-magical traps that would utterly ruin your day. One of the more creative ones I saw was a simple stick propping up what looked like a trapdoor in the ceiling. What the people didn't know is that the trapdoor was sealed on the inside with wax. And if you open the trapdoor, it's going to let something like 200 gallons of water into the room.
all right, what's our next humanoid, John?
Our next humanoid on my list, and it might be a bit of a dull shift here. I've got the hobgoblin.
Hobgoblins. Ostensibly an early attempt to put the Uruk-hai into D&D.
Yes.
Because they were tougher, more militaristic, effectively goblin orcs that could go out in the daylight.
So go on,
And-
teach me.
There is a theme to hobgoblins. There is a style to their armor and the way they were presented. And
Yeah, early on they really get pigeonholed as Asian monsters with
Yes.
kind of that Chinese or samurai style armor, depending on the artist, or a mishmash of both.
there we go. That it looks like almost like it looks to me like how I would picture a humanoid samurai with that armor. That
Yeah.
armor is it's
That is
Japanese in
definitely
style.
Japanese, yeah.
Another good illustration of early hobgoblins is on the cover of B2.
Yes.
Looks like somebody ordered a samurai from Temu.
It's funny, the face on that is so obscure. I've heard people arguing that that's actually supposed to be a Mempo mask and not his actual face, like the samurai style masks.
Hmm.
I'm like, no,
You know
it's
what?
just bad art.
I'm never going to unsee that now.
To be quite honest, me taking a look at this specific art, when I look at this, I don't see a mask. I just see a helmet that covers most of the face.
Well, the
Yeah,
reason
same,
that a lot of
same.
people argued that it was a mask is that the face projects beyond the protection of the cheek guards,
Oh,
does, yes.
well, yeah, even so.
and
So
it's also very poorly illustrated compared to the rest of the figure, and then also the rest of the humanoids in the book. It doesn't have any kind of facial structure except for that vague cheekbone. So I mean, there's a good argument for it being a Mempo type mask, but
I mean, the thing is, though, is
Yeah.
that the argument here is more or less that you're taking a carved version of a face and sticking it in front of your regular face. And
But that's
Trying
what they
to-
did. Well, in the Japanese.
Well, I understand that. Yes, it's just that trying to discern which is which in an illustration would be very difficult when it's not even colored.
Well, a good illustration makes that absolutely easy to discern because it gets done 1,000 times over every samurai RPG that's ever been made. So
Also, like the fact that they're using scale armor does kind of fit in the whole like feudal Japan kind of aesthetic too.
with the solid breastplate, and breastplate. Wow,
Breastplate. More racist.
Right. You're really adopting
accidental
Japanese
racism,
culture, aren't you?
but and the scale mail there does kind of make it look like Chinese armor too. Except
Well,
for
what
the
was-
laced up sleeving there?
Well,
You
what
can
was
see
the
all
name
races.
of that kind of cuirass that they had in Japan and China that was actually made of a really thick hunk of paper?
It's most of the Japanese armor. It's all lacquered silk or paper.
Is it laminar? Or
It's
something?
it's later. It would be Oyori is the full suit of armor,
Hmm.
and then it's later after they get gunpowder that they start borrowing European style steel breastplate concepts.
I mean, laminar was a Greek thing. Laminar was actually a mixture of leather, bone, and metal, and it wasn't a single material. And that was what made it so good. Is that it was almost like modern day bulletproof vests in terms of how it was put together.
Lamellar is a style of armor, and it varies depending on what you have available. You might have
that too.
and lamellar. You might have leather with silk on the back of it, or the Japanese stuff, which was often layer and layer and layer and layer of silk that was all lacquered together into a composite.
Right. That composite stuff, though, is that while it's not necessarily good at stopping swords, it was actually good at stopping Japanese longbows.
Oh, it's great at stopping swords, considering most of the Japanese sword fighting was slashing.
Oh yeah, okay. There's that too. I suppose.
I mean, you
yeah.
can stab with those swords, but it's mostly slashing weapons.
They weren't designed for stabbing, were they? They were they was mostly single blade, one very sharp single blade. But
I mean, there were
single blade.
stabbing weapons, but also the layers of
edge.
silk that are underneath that armor then all works to composite, and the penetration is really difficult.
But-
No, we're talking about humanoid races, not armor physics.
I know.
So the problem, though, with hobgoblins in gaming is this is the biggest deviation from the mythology. Anyone know what hobgoblins were in mythology?
Fey
Type of
things.
fairy.
Typically hairy little fey people.
Well, just like goblins were also.
Oh, right. They had the same
Traditionally, goblins
inspiration
were a type
that
of fairy.
the character David the Gnome comes from.
No, David the Gnome's a niece from.
Okay, it's like one of them's a good fey, one of them's a bad fey, but that's like the same general ballpark the way I understood it.
Well, so
And-
hobgoblin originally is a type of fairy folk. Yeah.
Yes. Often shape-shifting little fairy folk as well, little tricksters. So why? I mean, okay, these would have been portrayed as pixies, brownies, sprites, or that sort of thing in D&D. So what was the need for creating the hobgoblin as something entirely different and
A little bit
giving it the
stronger
wrong
than
name?
orcs, but not as
It
strong
was
as the
to
gnoll.
delineate from orcs. Easy delineation from orcs. To give that Urukai effect that they have.
And of course, they couldn't use the name Uruk, could they? Because
What's hilarious is later on they come up with another name for an advanced orc, and that's the Orog,
yes,
which is
Yes.
then another redundant humanoid. It's like, oh look, another 2-hit die humanoid.
In the complete book of Humanoids, the picture they have of the hobgoblin looks like an ape from the Charlton Heston's Planet of the Apes movies. It's right here.
Well, see those the apes in the Charlton Heston movies, the kind of armor they wore, that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean they've got that the simian face. It's even the arm, even the helmet it has looks like the ones from the Planet of the Apes. And I don't know who the artist was on that, but they definitely deviated from the vaguely Oriental looking one.
Actually, though, that's just actually, to me, it's a different style of vaguely Oriental, because my understanding of the style of helmet that they had as the Simian army in Planet of the Apes was actually like the kind of helmet that the Mongol hordes used when they were sacking Europe. Could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Now, in my game, I have a smaller race of humanoids called Hobbs, and they're half hit dice. I mean, they're roughly the same size as kobolds. They're tied to fairies, but they're not a true fairy creature. Their big thing in combat is they will make sure they are always in diametrically opposed directions attacking, so they always get a flanking bonus when they attack. And they can also do a swarm attack. They'll climb over the backs of someone that's flanking and get an additional attack on a side where they've already used their shield to block. But they basically hate their own existence. If they don't die in combat, they will come back as a hoplite, which is a very, very powered down will-o-wisp. I mean, they're, like armor class 4 kind of thing, and they can do a shock for 1 to 2 points of damage. But I tried to take them away from the, hey, here's a little bit bigger orc, and get them more into something that was fairy-like.
Yeah, and of course we as DMs are perfectly within our rights to do that.
Yeah.
So the hobgoblin hasn't changed much throughout its RPG career. I would certainly, when we look at later editions of D&D, they are very, very similar to the hobgoblins of early editions of D&D.
Yeah.
Large, militaristic brethren of the goblin.
I know
intelligent, organized.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
So, yeah, go on.
In 5e, they even give them abilities that make them more tactical than other humanoids.
Yes, so. They do. Yeah. Yes.
Which, if you read the description in the old monster manual, they're supposed to be more tactical than, say, orcs or goblins. So.
Yeah. Right. The next one I have on my list, a little deviation, the Lizard Man. I love lizard men, or lizard folk, as you meant to call them nowadays, because they were in the U series of modules, and they were used in the U series as potential allies, which made for an interesting dynamic, and it also brought in the idea of actions having consequences, where the party may well have to atone for their deeds towards the tribe of lizard men that they encounter. I hope I'm not spoiling the module too much. I do apologize for that. But their depiction, especially in U2, Danger at Dunwater, I think is fabulous in the fact that they are infighting, but not in a brutal sense. There's politicking going on in their lair. They are willing to listen to reason, willing to negotiate. They are willing to eventually help the player characters if necessary, but it also drives home the differences in beliefs between lizard men and humans. It pushes the language barrier as well, which I think is nice, in that potentially unless the party can speak the language of lizard men, they're going to be in trouble, because there are very few lizard men in that lair that can speak common. I like them. I like lizard men.
Yeah.
Do you chaps have any feelings about lizard men?
Ooh. That reminds me of one of my personal favorite tropes that is something that a lot of people don't do because it annoys them. But the idea of going into a place and having all sorts of stuff with neat, careful, easily visible writing on it that the party can't read because they don't speak the language.
Yeah. And yes, the Trampier artwork for the Lizard Man was stunning.
The one thing I like about the Lizard Men, from a game design point of view, and also from a history of the game point of view, it's one of the earliest instances of delineating nuance within the same species, because there is that little blurb at the end that talks about the advanced lizard men who will have metal weapons, and are slightly more advanced than other lizard men. So you're not just like, here is the one way this animal, this monster is. Here is this little add-on that gives them something more interesting than clubs and primitive weapons.
Yes. And this particular image here, this seems to me like being a more advanced lizard man.
Yeah, and he's got a broadsword. And
Yep.
And looks like a metal shield instead of the frequently depicted turtle shell shield. Although I like the fact that it's a metal shield, clearly by the studs, that emulates a turtle shell in some way, stylistically.
Yeah. It's a great piece of artwork. It's one of Trampier's best. Did we lose Marvel?
Man, miniatures. I have one of the real old ones. They're wielding a club with two sharpened, look like scallop shells embedded in it. So it's almost a Makotio kind of weapon. But yeah, and that has the turtle shell shield. And then some of the later editions I have, they're actually wielding axes, and one has like a Kopesh kind of sword. So there's even in the miniatures, they produced a primitive line and a more advanced line.
And people have mentioned the alignment, neutrality.
Yeah.
The description of them describes them as they're omnivorous, but lizard men are likely to prefer human flesh to other foods. And this sort of puts them, yes, at odds with humankind. And the neutrality, they're neither good. They are neither good nor evil by that definition. They are slightly more animalistic, because it talks about their dietary habits.
Yeah,
more than it talks about.
They have an intelligence that allows you to negotiate with them. It's
Yes,
just that what they want in life is radically, fundamentally different to what a human wants in life.
Yes.
And any one of them that knows what humans taste like thinks of you as food.
I think 5th edition actually did a really good job when they wrote up the lizard men as a player race, in really explaining that that alien mentality. Like, they have no concept of the emotions that normal mammals project. Very much lizard brain, literally, and they're the sort of thing like you're like, if you tell them that you're looking for something, they don't get the nuance of looking for something, so they're going to constantly like, is this the thing you're looking for? Yeah, because they just really did a good job of writing out that alien idea that they're not going to think twice about eating the villager that you just found dead in the village, because to them it's convenient and easy food.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, the rest of the party is looking on horrified, like,
Straw People, I thought that was
right back,
dragon.
Was that where?
To be honest, though, the lizardman thing here, again, it's very similar to the Argonians from that other game.
Very possibly. Very possibly.
Yeah, that's probably much more accurate than a kobold, yeah. Because these people have their own language, but they can speak your language too.
Actually, there is another interesting thing, caveat with Argonians. What is the racial trait that's a kind of like a
They can breathe
superpower?
underwater.
Yeah, kobolds don't do that. Kobolds live underground. They don't swim. Yes, Brian James. Argonians are from Skyrim.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, yes. So it does look like Argonians are much more closely related to the lizard man of D&D, and they're another humanoid that has not changed all that much through time. It's very much seeming that from the ones we've been going through, it's really just the orcs and the kobolds that have changed, and certainly the aesthetic for the orc has changed largely due to other outside forces such as World of Warcraft, and the kobold, as Elfbait says, to make them more relevant. Though I still picture them as dogmen. I like the idea of them running around going yip 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 and frustrating you like a little spaniel's.
I do
nipping
actually
at your
like the
heels.
idea of making so that the kobold's own personal language, that's like the kobold language or group of languages, I guess, perhaps. That's what it sounds like to humans, is dogs barking at each other, and like a high-pitched dog barking.
Yes, yeah. That I mean, but to them it's a language. But
dogs
dogs communicate by barking to each other. They understand each other, though it's not a language per se.
Well, but the idea here, though, is that humans can learn that. It's not impossible for humans to learn it. It's just
true.
It has a different structure to what humans use as a language normally.
Yeah. But I think we are coming to more unusual humanoid races that are further removed from the human portion of humanoid. And as we're getting further away, I know a lot. It's become fashionable. It was implied and it was mentioned early on that you could have playable races. These could be playable races, but I think it's pushed more and more now, and I think it is a shame if a player takes a lizard man character and tries to humanize them and just play them as a set of numbers.
Yeah,
it would take a very skilled role player to properly portray those alien traits, those very, very different traits that make a lizard man, because you're moving further away from that human assumption. I was just gonna I'm trying to find Danger at Dunwater for some of the images from that, but I haven't found it in time. It's time to move on. It's time to move on to the bugbear.
Bugbear, whip the lizard man.
Bugbear.
The depth story.
A bugbear and a lizard man walk into a barn and eat everyone.
We were trying to make ourselves look like the locals heading in descent into the depths of the earth. I was playing an elf, so I just did a color cantrip, made myself black so I could pretend to be a drow. We had a ranger that I polymorphed into a bugbear, and one of our players was actually playing a lizard man as a character. Well, everybody except for the two elves were both disguised as drow, and the bugbear were the slave runner or the slave owners. Everybody else was mock chained up to look like a slave caravan. And the lizard man kept trying to give input whenever we come into a situation. And it's like, hey, slaves don't talk. Bugbear, whip the lizard man. So he would take a whip to it. And yeah, that's been 30 years, and we still tease Paul about that whenever he starts talking at any kind of occasions, like Bugbear, whip the lizard man. And the reason I made our ranger into a bugbear is because that picture looks like the player who played that. Little spindly legs, great big huge barrel chest, and spiked black hair. I don't think to this day he knows that's why I polymorphed him into a bugbear, but I did.
Were his ears that shape as well?
What's that?
Were his ears that shape as well?
No. The ears weren't, but everything else fit.
Yes. Can I show the new Eralotus Bugbear's color art? I can certainly look for it. I don't have it, but let me have a little look. For me, the Bugbear always felt. I'm not going to say I dislike the idea of bugbears. I think they're made for extreme entertaining enemies, given their stealthy nature. The fact that they are considered to be goblinoids, and thus they would naturally boss smaller goblins around. But I always found their aesthetic a bit jarring. To me, they don't look like a goblinoid.
Just for the name, when I heard the name before I'd ever seen the picture, I expected something that was insectoid.
I mean, of course, bugbear is a word in English now.
It is, yeah.
Is it?
Good, sir.
I'm just looking. It is. I mean, I've got here on Wikipedia. It is a legendary type of hobgoblin, comparable to the boogeyman. So
it's right up there with the rest of the Fae.
Yeah. So
it's typical old school D&D where we're going to take every name for the same thing and turn it into something unique.
Yeah.
Just like kobold and stuff. And bugbears, if you look at that illustration, it does in many ways look like a goblin who's just a little bit more hirsute. And he's taller because he's still got the same, broad nose, pointy ears, general humanoid thing. But most of the illustrations of them that come after this, though, really lean into the fuzziness and the hairiness, and they start looking less like goblins. Like that picture there looks more goblin-y.
It does, yeah. I think that's a better picture of a bugbear.
Yeah,
than
really,
it's
just the Gygaxian power creep, where you keep needing to have new humanoids to go up in your different dungeon level difficulty. This one brings in the stealth factor, so now not only is it a heavy hitting thing, it's also going to have a better chance to surprise the party. So it fulfills a game mechanic. Most of the humanoid races are really, if you think about it, you're just leveling up your humanoid as you go from kobold to goblin and all the way up. That way you're not.
I'm just looking for the Otis artwork people are on about. Is it the one of them basically splattering a group of adventurers in very gruesome manner? Is that the one people mean?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. I mean, they could have easily written the game with just one humanoid type, and just because every humanoid, if you read about it, talks about level, basically hit dice progression through if there's large enough groups of them. So they never needed to do them. It's just really a way to create variety in the game while keeping the mechanics relatively the same, because orc, hobgoblin are almost the same encounter, slightly different tactics and stuff.
Yes. It's up to the DM to make them.
Goblin, kobold, relatively the same. And honestly, a bugbear and an ogre are almost interchangeable, because ogres aren't that much tougher than a bugbear in D&D, in old D&D.
They're not. No. Right. I'm just gonna.
Ogres are just a threshold. They can hit something only hit by magic weapons without having to use magic. So that was kind of their claim to fame.
Right, here we go. Eralotus bugbear. This is what my search came up with, and this is the biggest image I could find. This one on the right hand side here. That's the one. Hopefully, you can make it out.
Unpopular.
You can click on it.
Yeah, it doesn't open to a bigger version. That's the problem.
Click on it. Try clicking on it, and then right-click the image you see on the next page, and open in a new tab.
Is it just me, or is that like a really weak piece of Aerial Otis? Or maybe it's
And
the
then zoom
color.
in there.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it's not that great.
I want to know if it was actually colored by Otis or if that was colored after the fact.
I like the drow in the background looking like she's having a good time.
Yeah. I think that's the best part of the image, the drow in the background. Yeah.
Yep. I do remember that about the drow adventurers, is that bugbears were always in there as sort of the heavies for the drow.
Marhawkman, I can't hear you. Looks like you're yeah. It is, yeah, Muktuk. Yeah, you're right. It does have an adult cartoon vibe to it.
No.
I personally think the drow is the better part of it.
I agree. I concur.
I'd love to see see a black and white version of it, because I think it would read much more Otis. I think whatever lighting effects they used on it are not consistent with Otis's actual shading he uses on his color pieces. Like if you look at the Deities and Demigods cover and all of that.
That looks like a piece of storyboard artwork from the Den arc of Heavy Metal.
This line of discussion with levels and stuff reminds me of the fact that in non-D&D games, mind you, but there are multiple games where they actually have a level tables, like if you encounter X monster at Y level, then use these stats, and so on and so forth.
I'm not a big fan of I like having a sort of a standard for monsters and just tweaking around the edges. For example, if I create a goblin lair, when I was running 5th edition, I created a lair filled with goblins and hobgoblins, and very few of the goblins in that lair were the standard stats from the monster manual. I gave them different weapons. I differentiated based on their hit points in terms of what their size and what they were wearing, and I like to create variety in that sense. But in terms of increasing hit dice massively, no, I don't do that. I'll increase numbers and make it more likely that they'll encounter a leader and maybe a few lieutenants in there. But for me, a goblin leader will be pretty much the same strength whether you encounter him at 10th level or whether you encounter him at 1st level.
Yeah, I mean, the monster write-ups in AD&D especially were really good at showing the progression of the leveled monsters within a group and at what size encounter. I think the definitive thing there should be that where the party is going should change, not the stats of the monster. So, yes, they should be running into orc lieutenants and stuff at higher levels because they should be going into orc strongholds or orc lairs, as opposed to running into random orcs that are the patsies of something else. You know.
Absolutely, it won't be little bands of orcs that are ambushing trade caravans or anything like that. It will be, as you say, going into strongholds. And that's one thing that I always found jarring about the MMO approach, how you can encounter an orc at low levels in an MMO and it's got about 10 hit points, and an orc with a similar description near level 80, this orc has now got 500 hit points.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you want to make a challenge for your players, they should be encountering greater numbers of lower hit dice monsters if you don't want to necessarily throw in higher hit dice.
As someone who has played games like that quite a lot, it's an important thing to give enemies different abilities from each other. Like this one enemy might have a preference for long-range freezing spells, and this other enemy might have no ranged attacks at all.
Well, that's why you have a shaman or an orc, witch doctor or whatever in there.
Yes. I mean, the only MMO I've really played a lot of was Lord of the Rings Online, and that was guilty of reusing the same foes over and over again and giving them much higher stats depending on the area you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I hate playing MMOs myself because I hate running into the same guy. Oh, but this time he's red. Yeah, you know, same damn graphic, but he's red now. He's going to be tougher to fight. You know, either give me a new monster, which is, I guess, what they were doing with old D&D by upping the ante with the hit dice on the humanoids, or give me a reason to encounter a tougher monster, you know, and make him appear tougher. You know, if he's an orc who's harder to hit, make him look more veteran and put some armor on him.
Yes,
you know, or something.
And that's what MERP did.
Well, that is a thing that a lot of games I've seen that did the scaling thing did. It's like you have the like level 1 version of a character, and then you have these other ones that are, from an in-universe perspective, older and more experienced versions of the same things.
Yeah, you can have more skillful individuals, more experienced individuals, more intelligent individuals, but making like if you're level 7, making the standard orc you encounter at level 7 different to the standard orc you encounter at level 1, I find that jarring.
Why are there so many level 7 orcs suddenly? Unless there's a good reason. You're in Stronghold, or they have been magically boosted, or something by a priest, wizard, god.
Yeah. I think there needs to be a reason for it other than just game.
Otherwise, just chuck a crap load of one-hit die monsters at the 7th level guy and watch him scream anyways, because he's the action economy is going to eat him to death.
Yeah.
Well, one approach with that though is simply that certain areas have the beginner versions of things and others don't, I guess is because like it's the area that you're in that determines how scary the enemies are, not that the enemies themselves are necessarily directly changing.
Well, and that is something that MMOs kind of borrowed from traditional RPGs, because a lot of traditional RPG settings, if you look at any kind of a preset area, the closer you are to town, the easier the encounters are. And it's as the characters go up in level. That's kind of the general assumption, the sort of core conceit is that as the players increase in level, they're going to go farther afield. You know, in town, they're dealing with bandits and rats in the cellar, you know, maybe some raiding goblins or whatever who are in that mine over there. But as they go up in level and get farther away into different zones, they get into more trouble.
Hello, friend. Stay a while and listen.
It's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
Fuck, you gotta bring Link into it.
One example of using more humanoids. When I ran A2, Secret of a Slave and Stockade for my local group, they got down into level 2, the cavern section underneath. And they started to get overwhelmed by the numbers down there, and they tried to flee. And I had them pursued by a group of the elite Hobgoblin Guard, Marquessa's elite Hobgoblins, who are statted in there. And they have longbows that fire twice per round because they're longbows. And it ended. This is where the party got captured and made me not have to run them through the abomination that is A3, because the lieutenants, yes, I'm British, I'll say lieutenant, stepped forward and just sort of blocked the party in the room they fled into. And there was a bank of about 12 to 15 hobgoblin longbowmen behind. Simply that many of them firing 2 arrows per round cut down a party of 8 level 5 and 6 characters.
Yeah,
the party had their resources severely depleted. They were weakened, they were wounded, and it just cut them to shreds.
Yeah, but that's where I thought you were going with this. It's because like you described the thing and like that sounds an awful lot like a firing squad.
Yeah. That's effectively what it was.
I mean, armies that have archers are going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had cave encounters, for example. They run into to even something as minimal as kobolds, and the kobolds are keeping at range and chucking sling stones at the party, killing them 1d3 hit points at a time. You know, or
Yeah.
or you've got goblins that are up on elevated positions in a cave or a castle, and the other goblins that are on the ground are rushing in, but meanwhile the archers are flanking, so the party has to make those decisions. The goblins never got any tougher. It's just the environment was their home, or they had an advantage that allowed it to be tactically interesting, which makes the same monster play differently than D6 goblins encountered moving through the woods randomly or even on purpose. You know,
And that is the way to more effectively scale the enemies, with, as you say, with the environment, with the situation.
yeah, it's more, your players, I think, are generally going to appreciate it too, because it's going to seem more real. More, I mean, at least if you have players that appreciate verisimilitude, because then, of course, you might have players who come from a video game background and they're like, why aren't the monsters getting tougher as I go up in level? And what they don't realize is that they're getting tougher, just not in the way that on a per monster basis.
Well, they're becoming more challenging. They're not tougher.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I had Marquesa follow the hobgoblins in and say, "Take care not to kill them. My lords in Sudaham will pay a good sum for these." And thus they went into module A4.
Yeah, nothing says that a player that hits 0 hit points is dead necessarily.
Exactly.
They could be incapacitated and kept alive long enough to be sold or eaten.
Yeah.
That is a trope I personally love, is having the party run into enemies that have no interest in killing them, and other things that players might find less agreeable.
Yeah. I mean, if orcs have a shaman with them and that shaman can cast sleep and get rid of the party real quick and easy, they're like, okay, we'll cast sleep on them. The party wakes up, all their useful stuff's been stolen by the orcs, and the orcs are like, bye.
Wake up to find a wolf chewing on your foot, and like, wait a second, where are my boots? Why am I laying on this field? No.
Well, in the Cult of the Reptile God, the only ones that she killed were the ones she couldn't charm. We had a whole list. If party members were caught and charmed, they're going to end up being this or this or this or this.
Yes.
Later on, the party would actually face them as enemies.
Yeah. In X1, the Kopru are looking for people to enslave, and that way they can rebuild their empire.
Yep. Motivation. It makes, if you make sure your enemies have motivation, it makes them much more interesting than just being there as a sack of hit points to kill for experience and gold.
Well, and that's why the reaction roll and parlay was such a big thing in old D&D. I mean, the only reason I know that what the word parlay is and what it's used for is from D&D. I grew up with that word, like every group, bunch of goblins, I want to parlay.
Yeah.
Because everybody thought they had a cool fancy word, kind of like Malay. Or the guys who could not pronounce paladin and want to call it paladin.
I mean, there's a lot of people who learned the word parlay by watching the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yes, but those came out like 20 years after I played D&D, dude.
Oh, I know.
And
But
for you, Mr. Fancy Pants, with your paladin shot, I know.
It wasn't you. That was my friend Ilya growing up.
We had the same problem. We grew up here. We didn't. Paladin wasn't a word we had ever heard before. We read it in a book.
When I first started playing D&D, I kept calling it chaotic evil because I didn't know the word chaos.
I mean,
I knew the word chaos, but I'd never seen it spelled. And also, like, I knew chasm as a word, but I'd never seen it spelled. So I'm like reading it literally, like, and it's a chasm.
Did you say chimera, or did you notice?
I did. I said chimera.
I did.
Until I learned different.
And then there's the people who are familiar with the word chow and none of that other stuff.
Well, and like I got corrected on what I always called Cerebus by a Greek person. It's like Gatibus, and I'm like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to ruin your language. My apologies.
Well, then you get the ones that really have problems and say dro. You know, they've got to be culled from the herd.
Yeah, which is Dro.
Drow.
Yeah, now the people who pronounce it Dro are probably thinking they're right because the name Drow in D&D was a spin on the Cornish Tro, which is a type of troll from Cornwall.
If you look in the pronunciation guide in Dragon Magazine, actually both of them are acceptable, but
I'm just saying that the Tro pronunciation probably comes from those folks who know the origin of the monster is drawn from the Trow, or they drew a correlation between the Tro.
Or they know with one letter difference, it's a crow, not a crow.
Yeah, that.
Exactly. There's also that too. The fact that English is not a perfect language.
Now, my favorite mispronunciation. We had a guy that was
Come down, John.
The first time, and we were attacked by a bunch of hoboglobins.
Hoboglobins.
Hoboglobin. This has got to be some kind of blood sucking thing.
Are they from Hoboken?
Mispronunciation that creates a new monster. Because I had a player mispronounce wyvern as wolvern, and instantly my campaign world gained smaller pack hunting wyverns. So there you go. My sister-in-law used to have trouble with the word cleric all the time, and her brain just wanted to pronounce it as Celtics. But no, it's the chimera remark there, Bear. It's hilarious. By the time I had gone to this particular high school, I had learned the actual way to pronounce it, and it annoyed me because not only did the high school, whose mascot was a chimera, mispronounce it, they didn't even mispronounce it in the common way of chimera. They did it all French. You meant chimera.
Chimera. It's sort of chimera.
Like Chicago, I guess.
Chicago, chimera.
It's the chimera.
Isn't it meant to be chimera?
It's chimera.
It's chimera.
Yeah, chimera.
Chimera.
Yeah, and it's because it's another Greek word.
Chimera, chaos, Caribus. These are Greek words.
Yeah.
Chitin.
The best ever is I got taught how to pronounce the goddess of victory. Now you'll see people saying Nike, and you'll see people saying Nike. Niki. The actual sound of that word, if said by a Greek person, is Niki.
Yeah, if
it's
it doesn't
Nike.
sound like you're ordering food, then you're not pronouncing the Greek right.
It's the same as a minotaur.
Yeah, I get Minotaur. It gets really weird.
I mean, because we pronounce it as Minos, and it's a minotaur is from Minos, right? So
yes, but the same group of people who know Sargon of Akkad and still refer to them as Akkadians as opposed to Akkadians.
Yeah,
Sure.
and there's the people who call that culture the Minoan culture, and there's people who pronounce it the Minoan. I've never heard of Minoan. It's always Minoan and King Minos or
Minos. But if it's Greek, it's going to be Minos.
Yeah. And now we're talking about pronunciation.
No, but this relates because all of these humanoids have names that aren't. Not all the humanoids we see in the game, or even the monsters we see in the game, have British Isles names. Some of them have like some weird fucking names. Like, dude, when you play like a Eastern European one, oh my god, some of these names of these monsters, you're just like
Easiest one is the Leshy.
The Leshy, yeah, the Dolce
Leshy, right? But
what is that one?
The Leshy?
That one.
Zvarts.
That I think is completely made up. I don't think that's from any mythology.
Well,
anytime I have Taco Bell, I get Zvarts.
Here's the fun one for you. What's the difference between a Naga and a Nagina?
Why would I know?
Isn't Nagina part of a Jewish song, Hava Nagina?
Well, what I was going with is that's actually
male and female.
Yeah, it's actually just a feminine form of the word Naga.
So they're collectively Nagas, but
yeah.
Meaning ghost.
We must be talking about that very rare humanoid, the Lexigoblin, but
yes. Anyway, I was going to bring up Svarts next because I have a personal liking for them.
Well, that's Svart.
Actually,
you play Baldur's Gate.
That's Svarty of you.
Before we forget about Minotaurs, what category would you put those in? Would those be humanoids or demi-humans or what?
They're more of
No.
a
Not
monster
humanoid.
kind of a thing.
Monster. They're beasts. They are.
Well, they're only
They're
one part
monstrosities.
soul and 90% human.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
would
that's
class them
actually a
the
good
same
point. If
as
a
them.
null is a humanoid, then a minotaur really is, because a null is a humanish body with a hyena head.
In some fiction, Minotaurs have human intelligence. In some fiction, they don't.
Well, if you really want to get down to it mythologically, there is one minotaur.
Svarts.
Svarts. I will say this is one of those cases where the original, the original Fiend Folio art is not the best of the best art for the monster.
Also, I love that. I love that little guy.
I mean, it's not. It's funny, but I mean, as far as like, I actually kind of like the 5th edition version, the blue guy there.
He looks like a creepy gym teacher.
Bloody hell, I'm looking at.
Not that guy, the one to the left. That
I
one.
like this one. I like this
That
one.
one's a little nightmarish.
I like that one.
I like the ones that look like minions.
Then you have the second edition. You have the second edition one there, but it's all.
That second one looks like more like an imp. Or what I think of
These
it.
really read to me as like evil gnomes.
Well, they are
Yeah.
kind of. They are actually. They're a form of gnome, aren't they? If you read their background, aren't they a subspecies of gnome? Let me pull it up here real quick, because I have the entirety of human knowledge at my fingertips.
Yay, internet.
I thought there was an evil race of gnomes.
Sverfniblin are not evil.
Sverfniblin.
Sverfniblin are not evil.
Sverfniblers.
We always called them Smurf nibblers, but I thought they were evil.
Sverfniblers. Trying to find out where their background is. Svarts were once gnomes. They were captured by Fomorians and enslaved in the Shadowdark. Oh, that's new knowledge. What's the old stuff? Give me the first edition. Dagnabbit.
It was in the Fiend Folio originally.
I know.
I grabbed that when I stepped out. Let's see.
I know the were once gnomes thing. I think is still legit, but I doubt they had. They were definitely not from the Shadowdark, because that is a 3rd edition thing.
So what
Small
happened to them
humanoid
then?
creatures have bright blue skin and orange eyes. They usually wear loose cloth doublets. They are a mediary between goblins and kobolds and will generally attack the latter. They fear humans and will only attack a human party if the Svarts are greatly in the majority. What they fight
So
with.
there's no mention of them being related to gnomes originally. So that's all new lore.
They delight in taking prisoners for torture or ransom or both. They've been known to assist or be assisted by were-rats in their endeavors. Their lair is usually in an underground cavern or deep in the heart of a forest.
To answer Straw Piglet's question about the pronunciation of Sverfniblin, it's Sverfniblin. The V is actually pronounced.
Sverfniblin.
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 That sounds
You can
like
say it like
it's-
a Swedish chef, and it's easy.
that sounds like it has the same Old Norse roots as Svartalfur.
Yeah.
Svartalheim.
There is, of course, an excellent module which features Svarts. Truly excellent.
Yeah, Bear already
little
mentioned it,
series.
Taco Bell.
Great adventure. Fun for the whole family until the Svarts show up.
This actually brings up an interesting point. Do these guys follow the Seelie Unseelie dynamic, or are they something disconnected from that?
You know, nothing annoyed me more in D&D than when
No idea.
all these 90s pagans started writing shit, bringing all their obsession with Celtic lore into it. It was like, ugh. It was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I don't like a certain writer, I do like the fact that he's made an effort to go and explore other cultures like Indian mythology and stuff like that. I think that's more interesting stuff you can mine from.
Sorry, there I had Mrs. Elfbait talking to me. So,
Hi, Mrs. Elfbait.
I have a new dog. You can see him behind me now.
Hey, it's a new puppers. What's the pupper's name?
That is Rocco.
Hi, Rocco.
Oh,
He's our
Rocco.
5-year-old adopted dog.
Figured scared him away.
Nice freak out. He's like, "Don't say my name. I can't handle it."
No, he's a sweet dog. He's the one. I think I may have mentioned it on the Discord. Was loose in the neighborhood several times, and his owners didn't care about
Oh,
him.
I do recall that. Yeah.
So after he went to quarantine after biting me when I was trying to recover him, they called us and we adopted him. So he's cool. He's a sweet boy.
Here we have Smarts.
Oh yeah,
in the
everybody
module.
they just composite the Svart right over that art. They're like, we're not even going to bother drawing another Svart. We're just going to composite it over this cultist picture.
Oh, the creature in the background is also a Smart.
Just want to point out in Dirty History and Hobbies, I don't know if he knows this, but Seelie and Unseelie come from Scottish folklore. Yeats may have used it, but it's from Scottish folklore.
Yeah.
Do you say Yeats then?
Yeah, Yeats.
Yates.
Oh, fuck off. You still say twat, but you say water. What's wrong with you? Twat, not twat.
But no, these are both Svarts, because the one in the mask in the background is on stilts.
3 Svarts in a trench coat.
I like how Brian James is like, it's like a meme, you know.
But no, the one behind is on stilts. And this
Here's what you don't realize, John. They're both on stilts. Just the one in the foreground's on shorter stilts.
Yeah, possibly.
Forced perspective.
One variant humanoid, if we're getting into more obscure humanoids that I liked, was the Tasloi. The
yes,
goblins that flew around on giant wasps.
What?
Yes, the Tasloi.
Tasloi were awesome. The original illustration of them in Monster Manual 2 was pretty cool.
Dwellers of the Forbidden City, they would mess you up if they caught you trying to climb down the vines into that valley.
Absolutely, and I love this. I like this original artwork, which it's not showing it.
Yeah, the Tasloi are awesome. I've used them in because I have an island hopping, nautical campaign, so they're there all the time. But
by the way, whoever brought up the Dogmen way back when, sorry, which one?
The Kobolds or the
no, the ones from Basic Fantasy.
The Barklings.
The Barklings. Thank you so much, because I forgot that the 4th edition book was available hardcover, and it's always so cheap. So I went and I just bought one off of Amazon. So thank you.
See, other obscure there are the Dark Stalkers from Fiendfolio. Yeah, that's
here we have Tasloi. Yes,
and there's an illustration in the same book that shows one riding the giant wasp.
Can you click on the first image, the one, the green one there with the bit of that? God, yes. Click on it, see if it gets bigger on the thing over there. No, it's gonna be garbage size, isn't it? Right click, open a new tab.
Yeah, and that one they just made it basically a green goblin.
Yeah, but I like it. I like the leopard spotting and stuff.
Yeah, because the mottled skin is part of their original description because they camouflage into the jungle.
Yeah, jungle goblin. I like it.
These guys also feel like something that would be at home swimming.
I mean, that particular illustration could be like Mergoblin also, but
I made jungle goblins in my extended Dwellers of the Forbidden City sandbox. Actually, I made a lot of jungle type critters, but yeah, that's kind of what they look like.
I mean, that's the other part of the Gygaxian power creep, was to make the aquatic version of everything. Aquatic trolls, aquatic ogres, aquatic hobgoblins,
sea elves.
Well, and what's hilarious is it seems like every time he created an aquatic version of a monster, he would either pull another mythological creature. For example, aquatic trolls, I believe, are called marrows.
Yes.
And then but then sometimes they all sounded scientific, like the aquatic ghoul is a lacedon or something like that. There's one of the pictures I was talking about. Yeah, on the giant wasp. I think that's a later one from. That looks almost like Elmore art.
That's from the module.
Is that from the module?
That's from Dwellers of the Forbidden City.
Yeah. That's
a low-level party with a squadron of those.
That's
Oh, that
listed
will
as
screw
being
them up.
That's this is being vintage art from 1981, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah.
Vintage from 1981.
From the 19th
Well,
century, from the 1900s.
I have to go get my hip replaced. Goodbye.
Anyways,
And would you look at this image here, this blog here? That's my old blog.
Oh, is it?
Musings from the Moat
Yeah,
House.
Musings from the Motors is my old blog. I haven't added to it for years, but that's
You gotta
my
pull
old.
it up. Let's see it.
Oh,
Let's
you
see
have
it.
to,
Come
you
on.
have to let us see this now. Come on.
that is a big old frog.
Shame you.
I probably read your stuff and didn't even realize it was you.
Yeah.
I've gained 4 followers since I last looked into my blog.
How many followers per year is that?
That's probably one every. I mean, it's 4 or 5 years since I last wrote anything. This is when I started doing my reviews. Years and years and years ago. There's Tasloy again. Look. Can we zoom in on that? No.
Open it.
No.
Right click. Open a new tab.
Yep. Come in.
Feeling how the image was
And now
sorted.
control scroll. There you go.
Ah, he's loading.
There we go.
I like
That's
teaching John the internet and computers.
That's Tasloy. That's Tasloy. Yes.
It's pronounced Mero if you say it in a Russian accent.
Metal.
Mero.
Metal.
Arrow another way. You pronounce it.
Well, I mean, like there's marrow as in bone marrow, and then there's the other one that's
So that's marrow, not marrow.
Then there's Mark Merrow, the wrestler.
And then there's
Exactly. Also known as Johnny B. Bad.
That's right.
And then there's Romero.
Yes, Caesar and or George. Take your pick. We got both kinds.
don't get them mixed up.
Yeah, one's going to make a great zombie film. The other, not so much.
So, is that what the Monstrous Compendium did as a Tasloy in the middle? I think that's horrific.
That stupid, yeah, that giant nosed guy. Yeah, that's
No, this art's much better. Much better.
Oh, yeah.
That's more.
I mean, we have a slightly more weedy goblin that is gonna just devastate your party because they're flying. Scroll down. There's some other cool black and white illustrations of the Tasloy below that.
and also I'm guessing you die if you get stung by the giant bee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I believe giant wasps were one of those ones that actually paralyzed with their venom because they were going off the whole tarantula wasps and all of that.
Oh, okay, that could work.
And Iman won't know much about it. Tasloy were originally jungle goblins with ape-like characteristics.
Yeah, they had longer arms because they would break eat through the trees and all that. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that tracks.
So yes,
arboreal
Tarzan
goblins.
arboreal goblins. Yes. There we go. Tasloy, which of course featured quite heavily in the Baldur's Gate video games.
I didn't remember them being in there. Okay, cool.
They were out of their proper environment. Were they in Cloakwood or something?
Well, I mean, I guess they were they were originally jungle because they were in the Lost City or Forbidden City or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Module. But I mean, I can't see any reason why you couldn't just put them in regular forest and have them riding giant bees instead of giant, wasps. And maybe they have actually a big old collection of honey that you're after for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You could do that. Definitely. Yeah. You've converted me there. I think that's yeah.
Now just really piss people off and have them riding giant Japanese hornets. Which are already giant forest.
Actually, you know what? One thing that you could do if you're playing hard into the whole of being outside of the location where they should be, is have them fly in on oversized kabutos.
What? What are they?
It's a kind of beetle that's really, really hard shelled beetle. They're not harmless to humans for the most part. It's just one of those things. Is visually it would look very different from a wasp.
I think giant wasps are plenty scary.
Well, I mean, with the a giant
Have you not
Kabuto
seen
beetles.
Fruit of the Gods, sir?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
With the
No.
giant Kabuto beetles, they would have a higher armor class than a wasp.
Now, what you can do, as if you're going to use them central to your campaign, let's say the whole thing is going after some Tazloid, you could start with warriors on bees, and then find out that okay, fine, we killed the warriors with bees. What's that rumbling as they come bashing through the jungle on a giant rhinoceros beetle? Because they clearly have an insect affinity. So now they're using giant rhinoceros beetles or bombardier beetles as like siege platforms as they come thundering through.
All right, just admit it. You just want to play Starship Troopers at this point.
No, I just want to play with Tesla.
I can see these coming into your By the Sword campaign at some point.
No, that's too high fantasy.
It's quite.
I know they won't be showing up in Albana either. So relax.
I mean, a giant beetle
Oh,
is
thank
out
God
of
for that.
the Conan vibe, but I think goblins in general are kind of out of the Conan vibe.
Giant rhinoceros beetles, though.
Now,
Definitely.
if it was a race of monkeys or ape men riding giant wasps, then we might be talking.
Just reskin Tazloid then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the kingdom of the apes, but no, they have wasps that they're riding. What the hell?
Sorry, Brian. Sorry, Slan. He's going to murder you both.
Well, currently
giant
they're
wasps.
still in winter-locked Northlands, so no worry about tropical stuff. They'll probably get killed by the organized crime syndicate that they decided to try and take on. So,
Or the aren't they going to go Yeti fur trapping at some point? I think maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, we shall see. We shall see.
We'll see, yeah. I mean, there is a white lion, hunting the plains outside the city. So maybe they'll go get that. But
White Lion, they were awesome.
we already did that joke on the Discord. But no. So next humanoid, what's on your list, John?
Well, we're 9 minutes away from ending the stream, so I'll let you all pick a humanoid.
I already picked Tesla. Next.
Halakar, pick a humanoid.
Oh, I don't know. How about the one that everybody loved to love when the Fiend Folio first came out, the Gith Yankee?
I guess those count as humanoids. I mean, they're not undead, even though
Everybody in my group absolutely had to get one of those silver swords for their character,
and then regretted it.
Oh yeah, because if you thought Kobold set some nasty traps, you should have seen what they did when they came back to get their gear.
Oh, it's fun with that because I remember my party got one and they're like, "Oh, cool, we got this cool sword. We killed this Gith Yankee." And then the next time they were in the inn, I just had like a war party of Gith Yankee phase out of the astral plane directly into their room in the inn, like the wraiths and the old Bakshi Lord of the Rings, and go after them.
That sounds like a perfectly normal way to kill your party.
Well, if you take a silver sword from the Gith Yankee, there's nothing they won't do to get them back.
I was just going to say, no, Robert. No, not lava children.
Lava children. They looked like another one of my friends, Tim Binns. He looked like a lava child. We actually called him that.
They're more elementals than anything.
They are, yeah.
I think mine is a tie between the alpha primates and the moloids. What? They're humanoids?
That's true.
None of it about D&D, you fucking nerds. Jeez.
What are their D&D stats?
I don't know. I don't play fucking D&D.
Mix them up.
The Frykreen were kind of unique, as in they were one of the few intelligent insectoid types, but they weren't really humanoid.
Oh, they were insectoids.
Yeah, I mean they kind of filled that role, but I know they were big in the SSI Pool Radiance game.
Yeah, I think before them you had the Apsis or whatever from the Slave Pits, and then you have also the Formians, the ant people that were in like Monster Manual 2, and I think they're
Formians come out to play.
That's a bunch of ant-men trying to get home from Coney Island.
Exactly.
Coney Island.
Trying to get home from the Coney dog. They're just ants. Come on.
Exactly. It's like literally the entire movie takes in place over the span of 10 feet.
There you go.
I've never used either.
Bunch of cockroaches out there. Formians, come out and play.
I've never used Meanlocks or Sifal.
Meanlocks are a
others.
type of fae.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
they're not humanoids.
I've never used Githyanki either, to be honest.
Me neither.
I've
No.
had Yankee thrown against me when my friends' thieves just paid my barbarian to protect their thieves guild, where they didn't inform me that they had stashed a silver sword. And so when the Githyanki came looking for it, they ran inside, locked the door behind them, and left my poor barbarian to face the Githyanki war party.
Yeah, my friend DM'd himself through an adventure where he came out with one of those swords. So the next time it was my turn to DM, they came back to get it, and they grabbed it and just ran. And he's like, "Oh, they're not gonna phase out. I'm just gonna chase them." Well, they ran and dove through this doorway. I mean, didn't run through it, just took a flying headlong leap through it. He ran straight through the thing. The bottom 3 feet were a gate to the elemental plane of fire. The middle 2 feet were back to the ethereal plane, and the top 3 feet were a gate to the negative elemental. So
And
yeah,
he walked through it standing upright so that he ain't got cut into 3 pieces.
yes, one of them was incinerated in the plane of fire. One had every life thing, because it was basically the plane of level drain, and then his torso went to the astral plane.
Sorry, the plane of level drain. Like Jesus Christ.
Negative material plane.
Yeah, negative.
I know, I just like the plane of level drain.
That's like some very gamist.
I can never remember if it's negative material or negative prime, but it's the one that all the big undead are tied to.
If you want a really good published adventure that features Githyanki, it's in an earlier issue of Dragon Magazine. The adventure is called Fetafencer, and literally takes a high-level party into the astral plane to raid a Githyanki stronghold to recover a special named Holy Avenger sword, Fetafencer. It's actually a really good adventure in that, like, it presents this weird, like, floating fortress in the astral plane, and you have to have all the, of course, it plays into those old school AD&D tweaks for being astral and all of that. Like, you're facing on their own terms. What?
I'm coming towards the end of 1979 with my dragon read throughs, and I haven't encountered that one yet. So I'm guessing it was post 1979. I guess it was post Fiend Folio.
Still in the early days of Dragon Magazine, shortly after it changed from The Dragon.
Is this one of those adventures that might as well have a sign posted saying "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here"?
No, because it's designed for a high-level party. I have a printout of it somewhere.
Which one is that?
Fetafencer.
Okay.
It was published in Dragon. So.
I don't remember that one. And there's a few that are missing in my collection, but yeah, that's one that I never saw.
I have it printed out somewhere, but not close by, evidently.
Well, anyway, we are drawing to 2 minutes away from Pumpkin Hour.
Before we do this, when I was at Fish Camp, the little local library every year has a book sale. Just things that have shown up, whatever. So I found this and I bought it for 50 cents. Anybody recognize that?
Yes.
The story of Dallas Egbert III.
Oh, is that a good work of fiction?
Written by William Deere. This guy had more of a hard-on for destroying Dungeons and Dragons than any human being alive.
Head detective?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one that was behind Cruel Doubt and he influenced Rona Jaffe in Mazes and Monsters, that whole thing.
Yeah. What is hilarious, though, if you watch Mazes and Monsters, last commentary on that, if you watch it, the movie does a really good job of showing it's not Dungeons and Dragons that does it, but people were so all right that they just saw it for that, because clearly they make it in there like he's got issues to begin.
It's not an awful movie either, despite all the people who shit on it. It's actually not a bad movie.
I like the movie. I own the copy, and how can you go wrong with I don't know where I am. There's blood on my knife.
I want to go home.
And the saddest ending for a TV movie for that time. Oh, we adventured one last time, and blah blah blah. You know, it's really a movie about unresolved trauma and poorly treated mental illness.
Yep.
Yeah. A cautionary tale about actually engaging and believing someone's fantasy. Huh. Who'd have thought?
Revolutionary.
Maybe his parents should have stopped being so
White.
so amazingly suburban and
So
uptight.
amazingly waspish. Speaking of giant wasps.
To their child about his, and there's the subtext in that movie where you get the idea that his brother committed suicide.
Yeah.
Now they always say he just disappeared, but like I always wondered, like, if that's the parents are like, oh, you know,
he's at a farm with other boys.
Paul just went away. You know, Paul went away. He's not dead. No.
He went with the dog to live on the farm.
He's at another farm with other angry teenagers.
Yeah, like the whole thing could have been, probably taken care of if his parents would have just sat down and said, all right. And he even went into therapy and was like doing fine. And then they, anyways, I don't want to re-synopsis the whole movie, but yeah, it's a good movie.
He'd have been strung out on benzos by the end of that, though.
That's true. If he was truly an upscale psychiatric patient, like they make him out to be, he should have either been perfectly fine because he was getting decent care, or doped out of his brain.
Right? So
Valium.
Yeah.
They would have hooked.
They
benzodiazepines and worked their way up.
About 81. They weren't medicating as hard as they are now, man. Come on.
No, they would just lock you up and let you see.
Exactly. Lithium is no longer available on credit.
He'd be in Bellevue.
Before I come to the end of this stream, I do want to ask, I believe, Elfbait, you went to a convention last weekend.
I did. I got to go to a convention.
How was it?
But the first convention in over a decade, it was great. It was like 11 minutes drive from my house, so I got to sleep in my own bed. And I went there. I played like 12 hours of games across 3 different games. I played 3 different games I've never played before. I played Harnmaster for my first game with Sergeant Dan as the GM. I played Savage Worlds with a superpowered superhero police procedural where we're actually solving a crime as superpowered agents of the city's police department using Savage Worlds. That was incredibly fun because we had to do like the questioning of the witnesses and the people of interest. And then the third game I played was Solomon Kane, the miniatures board game, which is way too complicated to really get the nuance of it in one playthrough. It is, I would say, it's got the potentially a good game. I could have played more games, but honestly, the first night I was about petered out, and then the second day I got up bright and early, went there, and just ran out of energy after that first game. And part of it has to do with his new dog because he's been adjusting to the house this week, and so he's barking in the middle of the night, trying to figure out where he's going to sleep. Definitely going back next year and planning on hosting games, and met local gamers. One of which who lives like right across the highway from me. So bonus all around. Totally great experience. If you are within driving distance of St. Louis, come to Fear the Con. It's a small, intimate little convention that was described by most people as a family reunion without all the drama.
Fabulous. Sounds great. And Halacon sounds really good. 20 acres and some tents. Yeah.
So like a combination SCA event gaming convention.
Yeah, I'm not staying in a tent in fucking Michigan. I've seen your insect population. No
thing will be fighting our mosquitoes.
Yeah.
I wager 50 quad boots on the newcomer.
Yeah. Nope.
Right, we have come to Pumpkin Hour, so it is time for me to thank everybody who has featured on my stream tonight. In order of original arrival, Bear was the first to show up. Thank you, Bear. Thank you indeed, Bear. Catch Bear on Bear the Gen X GM, and he of course is my GM on for monthly live play game of Palladium, which is a lot of fun, and he runs lots of other games and has his own game called Heroic coming out.
And in about an hour, my channel, we're going to be doing a live stream talking about Villainous. Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
The next one to join me, though he has reappeared at the bottom because he disappeared and rejoined, was Iman, Intellectual Quandary. Did you stream last weekend? I didn't see you streaming.
No, I didn't. Got too busy.
Okay.
Hopefully, this
Iman,
weekend will-
Iman plays in our Palladium game. He plays in my Call of Cthulhu game, and he is. You're now reading through the Call of Cthulhu rule books and finding out exactly how many liberties I take with the rules. Are you not?
Yes, and I'm sure a bit of my knowledge came through in yesterday's session.
Maybe. But you're hoping to run some Call of Cthulhu in the not too distant future. So
Hopefully, yeah. But it'll be after we're done with Horror on the Orient Express.
that'll
So
be the
3
distant
years from
future.
now.
No, they're in. They've just arrived in Zagreb, so they're on their way. They've done Trieste now.
Oh my! I know where Zagreb is. Yes, that's a picturesque countryside.
It's not very picturesque where they are. No, it's
Well, I mean, they're the countryside outside the city, anyways.
yeah. No, they're
All we've seen is the train station.
it wasn't picturesque in the slightest. It was a
Forecast
grey and
calls for a slight chance of tentacles.
very possible. And then joining me was Halakar, who doesn't do his own channel or anything like that, though many of us think he should at some point. Currently running AD&D for Litlands, aren't you? The youngsters.
No, actually, they're all my age.
I thought they were younger than you. I really thought this was a younger group.
Nope, 2 that I graduated with. One of them's wife, and another guy who was about 6 years older.
Oh, I got this completely wrong. I thought this was when you said they were all a lot of newcomers to the hobby. I thought they were all going to be youngsters.
New as far as I have never DM'd them before.
Right.
Every
Okay.
one of us has 30 plus years of experience, but we have never played together as a group before.
Right. Well, that brings up a whole new perspective to it. Because I was all this time you were talking about your game, I was assuming that these were newbies who you had brought into the hobby, but no, clearly not.
No, I've got some nieces and nephews that want to learn how to play, but they want to learn how to play the newest, brightest, fanciest, and I can't get myself to do that.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, is that you can, maybe coax them into trying out the old thing to see where the new one came from. Maybe.
But someday I will have a channel called the non-PC PC, and I'll go from there.
I'm just going to dive in and quickly shill for Elfbait because he of course he's at work while he's doing this stream. Thank you for joining us. Nice to see you again, Elfbait. Always welcome on the streams. Always got some, even though you say you've got no skin in a game, you've always got something to give. So don't play yourself short. Thank you again, and check out Elfbait's live streams and his By the Sword live streamed game, alternate Mondays. And Mark Hawkman, not seen you on stream in a while. Nice to have you. Mark, if you don't know Mark Hawkman, go on.
I was just gonna say I usually watch your streams more than I actually join in.
Yeah, I know. You're there lurking in chat, chiming in, doing a halakar, chiming in. It'll be forever known as doing a halakar. But you have a channel, and it's fair to say that you are a fan of Star Trek. I think that's.
Well, I'm a fan of sci-fi stuff more than fantasy in general. I mean,
Right.
and like one of the things that I had an interesting conversation with someone recently. It's like when you take sci-fi concepts that are used in multiple forms of science fiction and contrast how the different sci-fi settings use the same ideas. Ooh, that gets in some really weird stuff.
I've run a game for you once, haven't I?
Yes.
I ran a game, and there was a little bit of time travel involved in it.
One of those Call of Cthulhu scenarios that's almost as much science fiction as fantasy.
And it all ended with a bit of gingerbeard weirdness.
And everyone getting turned into older versions of ourselves because time travel.
Yes. Yeah. It was all a little weird. It's all a little weird, and they sort of succeeded, but Gingerbeard managed to scupper them all completely and condemn them to a hideous future. So that's always interesting. But thank you all for joining me. Thank you everybody in chat. Slan, Brian, Nerds. Sorry, we're just finishing the stream.
Nerds Nerd, I'm live at 8 o'clock. Come on over.
What's that?
I said, Nerds Nerd, I'm live at 8 o'clock. Come on over.
Join Bear. Join Bear. Live at 8 o'clock.
8 Central or 8 Eastern?
Eastern. Fuck, I live in a real time zone.
I see.
Jesus Christ. Central.
Check out Slan's been doing a bit of streaming and videos and reading through weird old magazines. Check his streams, check his videos out. Straw Piglet, thank you for joining us. Omen Owl, Dirty Histories and Hobbies, and I'm not going to scroll that much further. Robert Phillips, and that's as far as I've got. So
make sure to read your needs.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next one. Good night.
Don't forget to give a thumbs up.
Bye.
Or a finger.
They
don't have a button for that.
No.
I can't stop pressing it.